Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special budget meeting of the Town of Richmond Select Board for Tuesday, October 10th. Is there any public comment on any item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? And looking around online, seeing none. We have a possible executive session on security procedures. There are some motions in the memo if anybody would like to make them.
I move that we enter into executive session to consider security response measures, the disclosure of which could jeopardize public safety under provisions of 1 VSA 313A10, and to consider a record that is exempt from public disclosure under 1 VSA 313A6, and to invite Attorney Joe McLean, Town Manager Josh Arneson, and Police Chief Anthony Cambridge into this executive session.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Forward to enter executive session under the provisions of Vermont law and to invite our town attorney, our town manager, and our police chief into the session. This was seconded by David Sander. Is there any discussion of this motion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, so we don't need the special finding motion, just the entering motion.
Just the one. Are you bringing your laptop?
I'm not.
Okay, so we'll just open the room for Joe.
Okay, so everyone listening, I'm terrible at predicting how long these will take, but it's my hope that this will not be a lengthy session. We will see, but we will be back hopefully in a reasonable amount of time to continue the meeting.
Okay.
The Zoom folks here in the room, the select board has exited executive session, and we will be here back at the table momentarily. Okay, we will see you shortly.
That's exactly. Oh.
Okay, so we'll give Jeff a chance to get back. Lisa is going to be rejoining from home.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
You look nice and comfy.
Yeah.
Did you see the bionic appendage?
Yeah. Things are just looking up all over. It goes, hey.
You like the bionic man.
Yeah.
Yes, and he can lift like cars and
With the right special effect.
right.
He picked up a full-size Dodge truck with a canoe on it.
Wow.
Okay. So we have 4 of the 5 select board members here. We have quorum already, and Lisa will be rejoining us from home. Our next item on the agenda after executive session is consideration of approval of 2024 health insurance plans for town staff. Mr. Town Manager and Ms. Finance Director, I will hush up and turn this to you.
Sure. We also have Terry Martineau from Hickok and Gorman, who is
Hello,
a
Terry.
consultant who helps us out with health insurance for the last couple of years. So thank you for joining, Terry. So I can give sort of.
Thank you for having me.
What's that?
I said thank you for having me.
All right. So I can give a bit of an overview, and then if there's questions from the board or if Connie or Terry have anything to add, we can do that. So insurance costs, of course, went up again. We are currently on MVP plans for the town. The town offers the Platinum plan at 90% of the premium paid by the town and 10% paid by the employee. MVP Platinum premiums have risen 12.8%. But the premiums are still lower than Blue Cross Blue Shield Platinum. The town also offers gold and silver high deductible healthcare plans the premiums for both of those plans are significantly lower than the platinum plan. And the way it's currently structured is the town pays 100% of that premium. And then the difference between that premium and 90% of the platinum premium goes to an HSA for the employee who is on gold or silver. So that way, essentially, the town pays the same amount in health insurance for each employee, whether they select gold, silver, or platinum. Gold premiums increased by 14.2%, and they're now slightly higher than comparable premiums for the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. And MVP silver premiums increased by 8.18% and are still slightly lower than comparable plans with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So the question here before the board is, what would we like to move forward with for 2024? I would recommend that we stick with the current plan. Seems to be working for employees. There's definitely an increase, but we also increased the contribution last year.
That's right.
It's still pretty fair. Terry or Connie, anything to add?
The only thing I could add is on the gold plan, we only have 3 single employees on it.
I was just kidding, Connie, you and I are thinking the same thing, and nobody on the silver. So the majority of your population is on the platinum plan.
Questions from the board?
And I apologize. The outright opt-out, if someone wants no insurance, do we still offer that?
Yeah, we do. It's $2,500 for single and $5,000 for.
And that's remained flat. We haven't changed that.
That's been the same for a number of years.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Probably.
good. Sorry, Barnes.
Jay, one thing we've talked about in the past is the connection between the town-wide approach and the collective bargaining agreement with the police around insurance and having some parity, I suppose.
Yeah, and this is currently the same plans that are offered to the police as well. So
And the same employee contribution percent, 10%, correct?
same contribution, same with the gold and silver. Yeah, same structure.
Okay.
So one of the things I'm struggling with is, I'm not exactly clear on what our overall compensation package is for not individuals, but what our payroll is. So like where I'm unclear is, when all said and done, we're going to try to get to a certain point of increase, a certain percentage point increase in the whole budget. And payroll is not an insignificant piece of that.
Correct.
And we did do a fairly significant increases last year. So before setting this, before saying this is what we're going to do, I kind of would like to understand, because the payroll changes based on who's here, and we have different staff,
Right.
And so it's not just because we're doing this increase means that it's going to translate into what our payroll increase is going to be.
Right.
And so, I'm uncertain whether to make a specific decision on this tonight until I understand that.
So just one thing on the timing of the decision. Unfortunately, with health insurance, we sort of have to know, I think it's end of October, we have to have a decision so that employees have open enrollment in November. Is that correct, Terry?
Technically, open enrollment opens November 1st, but anytime after November 1st, an employer can hold their open enrollment as long as it ends by December 15th.
So we've got till December.
I mean, that's really the drop dead date. It would be great if we could have this all buttoned up by Thanksgiving, just so that we don't fall through the cracks. But yes, technically that's how it goes.
Open enrollment has to end by the 15th. If there end up being significant changes, I think we would allow at least 3 weeks or so for employees to understand that and make a decision.
So if we
There's
wanted to
that.
So if we want to spend less on health insurance, it's not simply a matter of saying to Terry, we only want to spend X because the benefits that are offered there's actuarial stuff that goes into it, where you say, we want to offer this co-insurance, this deductible, this out of pocket, et cetera, et cetera. And then based on that goes into computer and outcomes. Well, this would be the premium. And that's probably not something that's done typically over short. I mean, it has to go to MVP underwriting, I would imagine, right, Terry?
There's a menu. I mean,
Well, these plans just, Jay, thank you for that question. These plans that the town uses, because you have fewer than 50 employees, you are using what's called qualified health plans or exchange plans. So in the state of Vermont, we have the Vermont Health Connect, which is our exchange. So it's literally a menu of products with either Blue Cross Blue Shield or MVP. So first, we generally choose the carrier. And as Josh mentioned, MVP is still less expensive than Blue Cross Blue Shield, although they're coming much closer together as each renewal goes by. But it's a menu of plans to choose from. So yeah, I mean, you could say we want this co-insurance, we want this, and this. And if it's on the menu, of course, we can zero in on whatever is closest to that.
Okay, I was thinking more in terms of, I work frequently with larger employers.
Correct.
Right. But as you
say, where you can actually ask for a proposal for a certain plan design, and then they look at your claims experience, your demographics, etc. This, unfortunately, when you're within the Vermont Health Connect and the exchange, it kind of, I hate this saying, but it kind of is what it is. We're picking the lesser of the evils here.
So if we wanted to spend less on employee premiums, we basically have to go back to the exchange menu. Like we're
you do, and you would have to choose plans. So the plans are all metal levels, and they start at the richest benefit being a platinum, and then they go gold, silver, and bronze. Today, the town is offering platinum, gold, and silver. So you're still offering a menu of really high benefits. And of course, with that comes the premium. The only less expensive, I will say, style plan that you could choose from would be a bronze plan. But what that does is that increases the employees' deductible and out-of-pocket exposure. So it's cost shifting. You're changing one for the other.
Right, Kara.
Can I ask what the deductible is on the platinum plan, since majority of your staff are on the platinum plan, and if they're not, you're paying them off you're still giving them the same, you're still spending the same amount of money on the premium, so you actually are giving them cash for them to pick a different plan. So you're not saving the money, is my point to you. So on the platinum plan, what's the deductible?
You mean the premium?
Nope, the deductible.
The deductible is $450 for an individual, or $900 for a family.
I'd like you to really think about the fact that the average taxpayer in Richmond, including all the way down to the affordable housing group, might be paying deductibles in the thousands.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's one thing that we've got is we also have a high deductible plan that people can elect. So we don't have one flat deductible. We have options. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the point is, if you're trying to reduce your premiums, either you have a couple of options. If you want them to be able to, your employees to have hardly any deductible at all, because that's almost like a doctor's visit or two, then you have the ability to have them either pay more for the premium, more than the 10%, or you remove the plan that gives them such a beneficial deductible so that they go onto a different plan. And I just would like you to really think about, you just gave the maximum raise you gave in the past 2 years, the combination of adding the cost of living plus the raise, got the numbers right here, got the compensation study from Josh, is 41%. The maximum. So I'm just saying, you've only asked them to pay 10% of a premium, where others in this community pay 20% and have thousands of dollars worth of deductibles.
Jeff, go ahead.
So I really don't like throwing those numbers around. What's important to me is what our overall payroll is. You know, the salaries, all of the salaries that we pay, so the Social Security and Medicare and the health insurance premiums, totaled not by individuals, but total. You know, that makes sense to me. Is that what we're responsible for? Is that, and it will change from year to year depending on years of service and who we have. We have, for example, we don't have the police. We have far fewer officers than what we budget for. So, what is the difference between this current year and what the next year will be based on the same numbers, and then decide what we're going to do as far as the health insurance is a big benefit. It's definitely a good benefit. And it isn't persuasive to me that other people don't have the same kind of level of health insurance. It's what we're trying to compete against is other public sector employees. And we're trying to do it for retention and for recruitment. So excuse me. That's what's important to me is what our overall budget is for payroll and where we are before we figure out what the benefits are.
Okay. Bard.
So, I think you used the word comparables, and that's what I think is sort of at the heart of this. It was the heart of the salary study to say, how are we doing for comparable positions in comparable towns? And
Exactly.
That's one of the things that we should look at intermittently. And similarly, same question comes up around, I think, health insurance. So
It is, yep.
how do we compare with other towns? And we probably don't want to be way ahead of the other towns. We don't want to be way behind the other towns, but we want to be competitive, I think, for both salary and benefits, including health insurance.
And one thing, if I recall, Bard, that we did to be a little bit more competitive in a sense was we actually went to 90% instead of 100 because most other towns did that, correct? We were trying to do more of an apples to apples in that wise.
I will say the era of 100% premium payment by the employer seems to have ended some time ago. So that was our first step to go to 90%.
When Patty was, a teacher, this was a big negotiating point with the teachers union. Is a health insurance percentage of what you're paying for health insurance premiums. She left 10 years ago. A long time ago, and she was paying 18%.
Okay,
at that time.
So I'm going to go back to Terry for a second. Terry, given that we're again because of the size of our workforce, we're kind of dealing with a cafeteria situation where we take a tray and we go through a line, and we choose between the lemon Jello and the lime Jello. There's only so many items to pick from. There's not, because we're not big enough, it's hard to say we want it to be this. We are offering a high deductible plan, and I do not know if there is a plan that has a higher deductible than the platinum plan, but is not as high as the high deductible plan that we do offer. Is there something in between there, or really are we already using all of our available options?
There is something between there. It's called the gold plan, which sort of acts the same. So there's a gold high deductible plan, which is an HSA compatible plan, which is the type of plan that's offered today. But there's also like a standard gold plan that's it's exactly like the platinum plan, just the copays are a little higher, the deductible is a little higher, the premium is a little lower. And just for comparison's sake, the deductible for a gold plan that acts the same way, it's not an HSA style plan, it acts just like the platinum plan, with MVP. It has it would be both the same with MVP and Blue Cross because it's a standard style plan. But it has a $1,400 individual deductible and a $2,800 family deductible. That's the medical deductible. You do need to add in prescription drug out of pocket as well, to get your true out of pocket. But as far as a medical deductible, and then the premium for that for a single, for example, with MVP would be $912.32 a month.
Okay, and I apologize. It's easier just to ask than to dig through the sheet. And how
No worries.
How does that compare to what we are currently looking at with the current platinum?
Your current platinum with MVP for a single person is $1,095 a month.
So $1,095 versus $928 would be the savings per employee per month. if we went to a plan that significantly raised the deductible. Not to $5,000 deductible, but still $1,400 and $2,800.
Is that single the 900 to the 1,000 comparison?
I don't know, Terry, could you hear Kara's question?
I'm sorry, say that again, please. I didn't hear you.
Premium, a single person or a family plan?
Which would you prefer? I can give you both. That was the single plan for the gold with the $1,400 deductible individual and $2,800 for the family. The single cost is $912.32, but the family cost is $2,563.62.
So this is me just throwing J-Fir's personal opinion. This is not from God. This is not ex cathedra. The difference, 1,095 versus 928, that is a chunk of money. But on the other hand, the deductibles can make a big difference to somebody who is living paycheck to paycheck. I think
Excuse me for interrupting. In addition to the deductible, Jay, there's coinsurance involved. So, there's a 20% that needs to be paid as well. So we need to add that in as well. So that, really puts that family max out of pocket for just medical on a gold plan at $11,200.
Right. And that when you're talking about, we're not paying our employees and having them driving Rolls Royces around. I think that given the work that Connie and Terry and Josh have put in, I think the plans that we're proposing to offer do have the right mix. I think they have the right mix. Because I think what you made about the coinsurance, that is huge. 10% versus 20% employee chip in. If you have an $11,000 procedure, and then like when I had my heart attack, that was $36,000. Fortunately, I have very good health insurance from my employer. That could basically lead to bankruptcy in some cases.
Well, that's kind of the thing is the coinsurance on the platinum plan is 10%. The insurance company pays 90%. The member pays 10%. But on the gold plan, it goes to a 70-30 split. So the member is paying 30% of that cost until they've paid the out-of-pocket. That's a much larger bite than would be on the platinum plan.
Right. Okay. Kara?
All I'm asking for you to do is consider moving it from 10%. Continue with the platinum plan if you believe that's the best interest of your employees. All I'm asking you is to realize that the rest of the community are having to deal with those healthcare costs like that. So all I'm asking is that you please consider, because you don't know if all those other towns are having 10% as their employees pay, and if they're all offering a platinum plan or not. So if you're going to compare apples to apples, go ahead. If you tell me all the other towns are doing a platinum plan and only doing 10%, then I'll understand that. But until you have that comparable, I'm just asking for you to find out that information and maybe go to a 12%, a couple of percentages, because your health insurance is going up 12% from last year.
Okay.
So some kind of shared.
Okay, Chef.
Might be shocking, but I agree with Kara. Excuse me.
Duncan, this is just a note. When you're making the minutes, please make a note of that.
Yeah, I think this is being recorded, right? So what I'm agreeing about is that I'm not suggesting changing the plans.
Just the employee contribution.
Yeah, just the employee contribution and
towards the premium.
And I don't really know how it compares to other towns and what the impact on our bottom line budget is going to be.
That's what I was getting to. So we're looking at these big numbers. On the upside, we've had some people come off of family plans that'll be going on to a 2-person plan. So there's going to be savings there. We're talking about a total of 8 people, 3 of which are single and already on the high deductible plan.
Okay.
So yes, the premium's going up this year, but in some respect, it's kind of a wash because we have someone going from a almost $30,000 policy. What's a 2-person platinum, Terry?
For 24 is going to be $21.89.
So
it only strikes me that, if our core principle was sort of comparables
Yes.
and some sense of parity, where are we with the groups? And we did the salary study, which we think is still fairly accurate. To your point, Jeff, does it behoove us to at least do a cursory look at other towns and saying what plans and premium contributions are they currently expecting of employees?
Terry might be able to answer that question.
I mean, I manage quite a few small of the small municipalities in the area. And I can kind of tell you anecdotally what they're doing. A lot of them are paying 100% for the employee. They are purchasing maybe a higher deductible plan, but then and we did this last year, Josh, every which way from Sunday with an HRA, but it didn't seem to work out. So we've tried to do, maybe increase the out of pocket and then supplement with a health reimbursement arrangement, which is a promise to pay if somebody should incur a claim, but that didn't go well. So, I mean, they are offering very rich benefits. I mean, as you guys know, there's maybe the pay isn't quite as high as the private sector. So I know that you're trying to provide, really good benefits. And I would say what Richmond is doing is very comparable to the towns that I manage. Now, that's just the towns that I manage. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns can provide you with a more substantive, if that's even a word, study. I believe they have that information available.
So that was also an appendix in the compensation study. So there is a chart in there that I could share if you'd like. It would be a snapshot from that's where they were spring of 2022.
This is one out of many items. Is this something we should, think about and come back to?
Bearing in mind that, it's October, open enrollment cannot start yet anyway. We do have, this could be something that we could potentially put off until next meeting or the first meeting in November. It doesn't even have to be decided during the budget meeting.
Does that make sense?
It would have to be before, because I know she said December 15th, but we have now done it so that because the employees are paying for a portion of it, we start doing that deductible with the first paycheck in December.
Okay.
So I have to have a premium square by the time we head into that month. And if you're going to look at a different type of plan, you need to be doing that now.
I think it's more,
the employee has to be educated.
I think we're looking right now more at the employee contribution
To the premium.
So we can put it off a week or two. We can't put it off indefinitely.
And I can provide the wage study data that we have. I mean, it's a little aged, but it's
at least a year.
it's
Agent.
And also, as Terry said, the VLCT can also provide some.
Yeah, few data points.
Does that make, I haven't asked questions that are going to be too difficult for you to.
VLCT has that report every year. Right?
I have it downstairs.
So we'll include the VLCT report and the
they have
compensation report.
They have a section dedicated to the people that participate in the survey, not everyone in the
That's right. They don't.
So can I just try to wrap this up with a bow? Then the sort of emerging consensus, I think, is to leave the plan structure alone, but to look at the premium contribution from employees based on whatever current information we get from conference.
And the way that I might want to make that decision is when we get all said and done and we go, oh my God, it's a 25% increase in our budget. And that's, I might be more inclined to share the pain here a little bit.
Although, as Connie has said, we have people leaving. So, as Connie has said, that we have people leaving the higher price plans anyway. So, I don't think the impact is going to be like a cannonball in a pond. Knock on wood.
I think we're going to be down. I think we're only going to have one family plan
So, we're actually looking.
coming year. It's going to be all two people and single. The kids are growing up.
It's certainly something that we should have. But based on our actual demographics, this may be a year that if we keep everything 10%, we're still going down.
Yep. So it sounds like it based on the membership, but yeah.
So then kick this into our next budget meeting, which is 2 weeks from now?
No, it's the 13th.
Or even just
that
kick
would
it to
be
next week.
Let's just go next week on Monday.
Because it should be a 5 or 10 minute item.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
just-
single
yeah.
factoid. if you
It's
will.
2 reports to grab and put into the packet. It should
Okay.
be hard.
Okay,
I think it's
yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Thank you for considering.
Yeah, I appreciate what Carrie, it's a good point. And we also, again, we've seen history.
We've made history.
No, he's agreed before.
Actually,
I'll
I
play
have
it.
done it before. I have done it.
So, Terry, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And thank you, all three of you, for the work you've done investigating this. Okay, our next item.
Sounds good. I'm going to excuse myself. You have a good meeting. And please, Josh and Connie, let me know what I can do to assist if you need additional information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Enjoy the evening.
I'd just like to share with anybody watching at home that Pavlovics, the taste that leaves in your mouth. Oh my God, I'm sitting here going, something's died in here.
The cross between cat litter and dust.
With a kind of a metallic tang that gives it that little, yeah. Okay, our next item on the agenda is, I'm pretty sure this is a Connie item, review our fourth quarter fiscal year 23 financials. So Connie, is that you? You want to?
You
I'll
got
do it
to-
quick.
He
So-
takes all the notes.
Well, I got some notes, but also just sort of want to preface it by typically we try to do these within a week or two of the close of the quarter. But this being the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, it's the final quarter. We still have invoices coming in July and August that are being applied back to that fiscal year. So if we shared these numbers right away, they would be changing. So that's why we waited until things fully settled here with FY20, or mostly settled with FY23. We still have potentially some adjustments from the auditors, but we probably got pretty close on these. I think some highlights as we look at sort of the year end, police department expenses are down about $371,000 based on budget. Interest is up by about $92,000 based on higher interest rates, having more money in the bank and the certificates of deposit. Highway had an increase of $258,000 in their unassigned funds, which is the restricted funds. And in the general budget, we had about $500,000 increase in unassigned funds. So both unassigned and restricted funds did increase due to some vacancy savings over over FY23.
And the added expenses due to the flood, which we have not been reimbursed for yet. How has that impacted the highway unassigned fund?
So I might kick that to Connie because that's not in FY23. That's going to be about, what is it, $400,000?
Right, that's all hit. You're right. That's all going to hit.
Yeah, that's all going to hit FY24, but it's about, I think, $400,000 that we've tracked so far on that.
Yeah, basically with what we've already had going on, the 500,000 that we're already throwing at the highway budget, that restricted fund is going to go down to less than 250,000.
Okay.
But Jay, just my point is, so if I understand correctly, try to summarize. If we look at our estimated unaudited fiscal year 23 end of year, we're somewhere over $1 million of excess receipts, whatever I want to call that. Excess revenue, unspent, budgeted but not spent, whatever it is. Over $1 million left at the end of the year. So this was one of my two things. What's our target for next year's tax increase, which is in the neighborhood of 3%. The other key thing I think for us to consider is how much of that more or less $1 million do we want to target for next year's expenses that offset the need to collect taxes.
Right.
And contributing to that decision is how much do we have left with our sort of target, which is in the neighborhood of 18% of the total. So there's like a couple of moving parts there, but if our standard sort of fund balance is around 15 or 18%, and then we have another $1 million, would we conclude that we have about $1 million from 23 to throw at 25? And I don't want to be glib about throwing money at 25, but that's kind of what it looks like.
I've actually already plugged 500,000 in just to plug a number to throw at it. I'm with you. I think it's going to be closer to 1 million. And I think when we get to the budget, we can have those conversations. Plus, we'll also be discussing the fund balance policy.
Mhm.
And that's where we need to make the decision. What's that magic percentage or number going to be? But for now, the numbers that you've looked at that we've put up, I have put 500,000 in,
Okay.
Okay, Jeff?
What did we do last year?
500,000
That's what I thought.
on the restricted side.
Okay.
Josh?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Kara?
I asked at the last select board meeting to have the percentage that was presented at the town meeting, that chart updated, because you were at like 35%. I think I wanted to know what the percentage was where we landed at the end at FY 23, so that we know, because we're talking 15, 18 for putting a policy or procedure in place. What's the percentage if we know the numbers right now?
We don't. You got my guess.
Well, we've
Based
got,
on the budget
so
status.
we've got this, I think, right? We're looking at, let me share screen.
I just want the percentage said out loud.
Well, let's see. So we've got, oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Wrong button.
Well, we have the review of financial
Yeah,
policies at the end, right?
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. So, but I mean, we've got a history of unassigned and restricted funds that were included. And then sort of what our FY23 year-end balance is, unaudited at this point. I didn't put this as percentages. I can add that in though.
So this, I'm looking at it, it's been about $1 million for a while, and then it goes up to 1.4 to 1.8 to 2.5.
Well, are we talking the unassigned, unrestricted?
Unassigned and restricted both. So the highway surplus and the non-highway surplus, right? This is the correct chart to show for that, Connie? Yep.
So we have been building, correct?
That does appear to be the case, yes.
We've also been using it all along.
And, well, let's be clear.
But
We're not-
it continues to build largely. I
Right.
think we've got
We're-
lots of savings on the police. And then I think, didn't we get a FEMA payout in FY23?
Right. The big ones, the last 2 years has definitely been police vacancy savings, and the big one this year for the highway department. Thankfully, we got it because we needed it this summer,
Here we is.
was the
The culvert?
$350,000 from the 2019 storm.
That
We
was,
finally actually,
I think that was a Dugway Road money, right?
That was Dugway Road.
that was not Thompson Road?
Not Thompson yet.
We're still waiting.
When that happens, I want to, okay. So we are, the amount of money we're putting aside keeps increasing. We're putting money toward taxes, but each year we have more money not spent than we expected. And so the number goes up.
Can I ask you a question? You have the 1.7 million there. You put five that you had left over in FY 22. Everybody there? 1.7 million. We'll round it up to 1.8 million. Of that 1.8 million, we built 500,000 into the FY 23 budget.
Mhm.
Yep. We still grew it over that 500,000. So now we're at $2.5 million of quote savings for either overtaxation or under providing of services.
Mhm.
This is where I'm saying enough is enough.
So
Well, on the
we're going to be
2.5,
discussing this as the
We will
fund
be,
balance
yes. Right.
policy at the
Well,
end
it
of the
impacts your
meeting.
budget planning.
It does.
So can I make a suggestion on this table? You know what might be useful, and I realize this is a little bit of work, is if we could put year-end unassigned total as a percent of the budget, just to see where is that floating, because the
It's-
budget's going up.
Right.
So presumably, there's a couple of years here where it's a little over 900,000.
Mhm.
That's probably about the same percentage. Maybe the percentage went down even when the dollars went up by 60 grand or whatever. it is.
Our budget's
Add
around
that in.
When he
4 and 5
charted it, it
million.
was going up. When Josh
So just-
started it for town meeting, that's what I'm going by. It was his chart. That's what
My
I'm.
real point though is for this table, I think it would be helpful to see it in one place and the bottom line say total unassigned funds as percent of this fiscal year's budget.
Yeah.
And
I
to
would
see
do
it
it the operational budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Or, well, I think the chart I've done is just of the total budget for the next year. So
Okay.
at end of FY21, I said, well, what's the 22 budget?
Yeah.
what's that percentage? So you kind of have the percentage of what your budget is going forward.
Okay,
But yeah, we
So-
can add that in there.
I
So
think
from
it
a
would be
standpoint
more
of-
transparent to do it for that year because the budget goes up every year. And I think that if we have unassigned excess revenues at the end of the year, it should be calculated as percentage of that year, not the following.
But
year.
you could still place that
Okay.
on the chart.
I'd like to have people too, a little bit more getting called on because this is turning into more of a discussion. And we do need to have people asked to be recognized. Connie, I would just like to ask, because sometimes we do have mission creep. The agenda item does say review of fourth quarter FY23 financials. We cover that before we get down to the budget and the fund balances. Is there anything else you'd like to call out or that any member of the select board would like to ask about our fourth quarter FY23 financials? We still have left to discuss the FY24. We're not there yet. Anything else about FY23 fourth quarter? Okay, anybody in the audience, anybody online, anything else about the FY23 fourth quarter?
Will you be revisiting this anytime again in the future after some more analysis comes?
We will be, because as already been said, we do not have all the invoices for that quarter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will hold my further questions until then.
Yeah, I think that's there could be sizable amounts of things yet to come in.
Really, the next thing that we'll.
Maybe not, but there could be.
Right.
But the next time we'll really review the fourth quarter financials would be in the audit.
So I had one
we not
specific
typically come back and do
Oh.
another pre-audit
Okay,
review.
Jeff, go ahead.
So on this report, and I can't,
Which one are you on, 3A or
it was the same report that had that last,
3B, page 7? Okay.
under the capital project funds, they had fire department impact fees. Do we have impact fees for the fire department now? We do. What are they?
We always have. It's based on when a new property is being developed.
And about like how much is it for property?
I couldn't tell you. It's certainly a small amount each
It's
year.
not a whole lot. Yeah. Looks like it grows, by a couple $1,000s a year. So it's not,
And that is a restricted reserve and can only be
Okay.
used under certain circumstances.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the FY24 first quarter.
So on the first quarter, just a couple of things of note. There's
Oh, and I'd like to also note Lisa has joined us. Thank you, Lisa.
obviously many things we could look at, but so a couple of things is interest revenue continues to be up. We're already up over the total budgeted by about 32,000. We also continue to have a large savings in the police department based on current staffing, even with Heinsberg.
Okay, questions from the select board. Lisa, I don't know exactly when you came in. Did you get what Josh just said?
Partly. Actually, being a spectator, his mic's a little bit muted.
Thank you for letting us know.
Thanks.
There you go. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I just said a couple of things to note in the first quarter is interest revenue is already up over budgeted by about $32,000 due to more money in the bank, the CDs that we've been purchasing at higher interest rates. And we have also continued to see a large savings in the police department, even with the contract with Heinsberg. Of course, that's going to be a larger savings.
And Jim and I had some conversations earlier. Jim Feinson, the town's treasurer. And we want to, we've got the one replacing the CD that just termed at the end of August. That's gone to the bank, but we're talking about maybe doing one every quarter and possibly increasing the next one to 1 million if the November 15th tax installment goes well. So that way we'd have a CD coming to term every 3 months.
Okay.
Until we use the ARPA money, it makes sense to
Right,
putting it to good use as long as we have the cash flow.
right. It's not money we can just use to apply toward taxes. It
Right.
has to be maintained and we might as well get the most out of it.
Right. And most of our loans don't come up until the spring. So
Okay. Questions? David, Bird, Lisa, did you get that now?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, it's not earth shaking. We're not far into the quarter, but it's nice to know that interest rates are up, that we're.
If you have money,
Mhm,
persons need to borrow money.
right.
So first quarter. So when did Chief Herrick leave?
Early June.
Okay, and Officer Dangler?
June.
No, I
Well,
think
end of
in May. Yeah.
We've got 2 months worth of,
First quarter is from July 1st, right?
Yeah.
So why would we have salaries?
Diane?
No, yeah.
Oh, Diane? Okay.
There should be small amounts.
Yeah.
But still Diane.
4,000 or so.
okay.
Okay.
So, thank you, Jim and Connie, for keeping an eye on our financial portfolio. I mean, so it has to be said, you've got to know where your money is, and you don't want to invest it in buggy whip stocks, you know? Okay, I'm dating myself again. That used to be the gold standard. If you need to make a reference to a stupid investment, it was buggy whip stock.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Oh God. You know, there are towns who actually did that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
One of them lost their password to their account, and cryptocurrency password account, they cannot be recovered. It was some stupid little town in California. Never mind. We don't do that. Okay. So now we are prepared to move into the moment some of you have been waiting for, the library budget. Okay, no, we're now moving into the draft FY25 budget. And as it happens, the library department budget does come first. This money and supervision of the library obviously comes from the trustees, but we are funding through the budget. So, Josh, Connie, if you'd like to go over the library budget.
I'll give a couple of highlights. Rebecca's unable to join us this evening, and the trustees, I think the first time they actually saw this was last night. So there might still be some changes coming from the trustees.
So we can pull it on screen.
Yeah,
That would be
sorry.
a very good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for that reminder. So not a ton of changes. It stays pretty much the same, except to increases to wages, due to an increase in staffing hours, and 2 employees going on to the retirement system due to increased hours. Also note that the books line and building maintenance line both increased in an effort to buy more books and keep up with increased building maintenance issues. Connie, I don't know if you have other lines of note in here, but I think those are some that kind of jumped out to me.
I'm going to idly ask about line 139 on the spreadsheet, not because it's significantly large, just because I find it interesting. Our telephone expenses are dropping by a quarter for the library. Did we get a better plan, or did we just discontinue a line?
So I think looking at the 2,400 is the actual, and we had budgeted quite a bit more. And now we're trying to I'm not sure why we budgeted more, but we're trying to get back closer to that actual plus a little bit more for an increase.
Okay, I mean, as I said, it's certainly not a large amount. It is also, speaking as somebody who's worked in 3 different libraries, it's nice to spend more money on books, especially as books go up. You have to be able to afford them. I just always can't stop thinking, I wish we had more room to put them in. Because that's a huge limiting factor right now, is we can buy books, but we have nowhere to put them. So we have to constantly cull. And once the books are gone, they're gone. We don't have a secret storage vault that we can go down to. So if anybody wants to donate a large library warehouse, please let me know. Any questions from anybody else now that I'm kind of blathering? Kara?
I support getting more books and doing maintenance to the library. Kara's supporting some spending here. And if maintenance includes like paint jobs on walls, things like that, let's please make sure we do it, because as you can see, the walls here haven't been painted in 20 years.
Mary was actually going to do something about that, wasn't she?
I'm not sure we talked about paint specifically, but she would probably be up for it.
Fix the walls downstairs.
You did?
I did.
Cool.
So to be clear on the telephone line, it's not just telephones, it's also their internet and some new things that they started implementing after COVID happened. So they had a few things done. And as far as the maintenance in the library, we will see that when we get to the capital plan.
Okay.
So just a procedural question. Should we be talking about the capital plan separately, or should we be talking about the library budget and the library capital plan?
We can.
Sure. I mean, I think that's reasonable.
Can we go, before we go there, can we just skim down so we see the bottom line also here today? Thank you.
So 8.77% projected budget increase.
And that's the staff that went up to 24. So 2 of their staff went up to 24 hours per week, which then means we have to pay Beamer's.
And just, there's an 11% increase in salaries due to some of that staffing too.
Hey, Kara?
Basic question about when you bring the capital plan discussion into, like they have an 8.77% increase here. But is any of this spending going to be possibly funded from some restricted reserves or some reserves?
Yes.
So like this 8.77% isn't really an increase if we're going to fund 5% of it from reserves. Does that make sense?
I don't,
So I'm just going to make sure in my head I'm weighing that it.
I don't think any of that building maintenance is those longer term projects that are going to be funded from
I don't think
reserves,
so either.
right? Because there's other there's other like larger,
Smaller things.
this is more smaller things that continue to come up.
That she was just talking about painting and things like that is in the capital plan.
Yes, larger, like exterior painting, slate roof is,
I don't mean exterior. I don't mean, I just.
Interior painting.
oh, I don't know, is the interior in the capital plan? Okay.
It
I
is.
mean interior.
Yeah, Rebecca added 3 things to it, and those items will all be paid with the library reserve money.
Which
Thank
is
you.
not in here.
So 2 separate things. Thank you.
So I did have a question about the capital reserve fund for the library.
Can you pull that up?
So, you
Capital
have
plan?
that we're gonna
You want reserve or capital?
capital.
Yep.
The capital reserve.
For the library.
You know, we did have painting, interior painting, but we don't have exterior painting. The exterior painting, you know, that might be a good capital reserve fund line item because it costs about $100,000, maybe more to do that. And you might do it once every 10 years. So having a capital reserve doing that might make sense. On the other hand, you know, they have a couple of smaller items, flooring and lighting and even interior painting. The flooring is $15,000, lighting's $15,000, and even the interior painting is $25,000. It's starting, you know, those might be considered more maintenance items than try to do capital reserve on them. But the exterior, the expense of this building is certainly the exterior, and it's, you know, it's because
some of the amount of money we're going to have to spend, as you know, could have been avoided had we spent more in the past in a more of a planned fashion.
Yes. So, you know, what the town center committee would like to get to when they get through the renovation is to think about facilities management, you know, coming up with a proposal for facilities management.
So that our ceiling doesn't look like this.
Yes, exactly. Or somebody looks into that and not Josh on a step ladder trying to figure it out.
And that's what this is all about. Our capital plan will only be for 5 years that gets approved and presented. But I carry it out 15 years, and we do that and we put an estimated life in each thing so that, okay, if we do the interior painting in fiscal year 25, 15 years down the road, we're going to have to do it again, type of thing. So we put a lot into what is the life expectancy of all, and this is all capital things are considered to be anything over $5,000. So whether we pay for it reserve or whether we pay for it through taxes, it's going to go in the capital plan. Where we differentiate is down in the remaining balance section. So we could, if we're going to pay with tax rather than reserve, it goes in that line.
Okay. I'm confused about the boiler. Didn't we do the HVAC over there? We spent a lot of money on that. But was that the boiler?
Is that the?
I asked her the same thing and she said no.
So there's
Air conditioning.
an upstairs boiler too, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I think the one we did in the basement was that we replaced that.
Yeah.
I think there's still upstairs, but I'll ask because we did do the HVAC, which was I think more. There's a heat pump there now, but maybe the boiler. Let's ask more on that. But that's a good question.
But I think that, you know, we should add to this the exterior painting, and I believe they're getting a number on that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be somewhere in the $150,000.
We should also add the slate roof too, because that's coming in the quote as well.
Okay.
All good questions.
Okay. On to fire.
fire. Jerry?
Unfortunately, Chief Kyle has been under the weather for some time. So we haven't been able to actually meet and finalize some of our expenditures for that year. So we're just I'm kind of shooting dark a little bit, but I'll try to answer everything I can.
And I'd say the one thing that I think is the biggest change here is the fire capital reserve. We went from a budget of 150,000 last year to 220,000 this year, and that's in large part to pay for the next truck purchase.
Yeah.
And per the capital plan, we've tried to structure that with no loans, which is going to require more upfront cost.
I also, though, noticed line 174, the safety equipment and gear reserve,
Right. And you could probably expand on that, Jerry, but I believe we've purchased some air packs, maybe ahead of schedule, so we don't need quite as much.
Right now, we purchased all the air packs we need to for probably 10 to 15 years.
and they don't obsolesce in storage or anything.
No, we have 2 for the new truck that's coming in about a year, which will make every truck have the required amount of air packs. The only thing we're really short are bottles. We're probably short about 6 bottles to have an extra bottle for each pack.
How many can we get those? Or,
Yeah, we can get those. Those are about anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a piece.
but they're probably, I bet the price is going up all the time, right? Like everything else.
Right now, those are pretty steady.
So we should go ahead and get them.
But after 15 years, we have to replace those.
Right. Just like scuba tanks.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's line item. I guess it's easier for me to do the spreadsheet.
It's the third from the bottom.
74, right?
Yeah.
And so what's 169 when they say equipment purchase? That's not a vehicle, right? No, it's all the equipment that we need to replace or we're upgrading. Like this year, we bought new stabilizing bars. So when we go to a car accident, we can stabilize the cars better so nobody will get hurt. Those are about $5,000. We have.
So that goes on the vehicle to stabilize?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
are we talking like you've gone in an accident and the car is in danger, like tipping over or? Okay.
so those were actually close to 9,000, but we bought demos and they gave us $4,000.
You bought the 4 models. Yeah.
Yep. We've done that 2 years in a row, so those are out of the way. But we have some other equipment that we'd like to purchase. And there is a rumor going around. I told Josh this morning that the ISO may require hose replacement after 10 years. But I'm not 100% sure about that yet. I tried to do some research this afternoon. I didn't find anything. But with the new truck coming, not the next spring, but the spring after, we're going to use up pretty much our hose supply that we have on the racks. So I put some hose into next year's budget.
Into
Okay.
that equipment.
And you're guys spending a little bit more on hose testing, I see.
Hose
because of that.
testing, yeah.
Go ahead, Bart.
And is hose purchase fit into the equipment purchase?
Yes.
Okay. And where does that relate to the capital budget for the fire department? We have like air packs and air tanks and stuff on
Yes.
the capital line item, but we don't have that kind of equipment line item in the capital plan that I don't.
Well, we've got, like the stabilizer kit is there. Line 25.
Air packs are in there,
Oh, I got you.
tanks are in there.
Bunker gear, that's taking 6 to 8 months to get. We just got some.
I have an odd question that somebody asked me. What happens to the hoses that are taken out of service?
Either we throw them away or some people like to use them for boat docks.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The old
Just say,
cotton.
let's not throw them away.
You put any pressure onto them, they leak and.
I was thinking, because this came up, my next is what I was thinking for everybody's benefit is there was discussion about pumping out the swale with the flooded. You need a big pump and a bunch of hose. Probably doesn't matter if it leaks a little and it's not going to be high pressure because it's just going out to an open end, right?
Right. With the 4-inch hose we have, it's no good. You can only do like 200 or 300 pounds PSI.
Well,
So on a fire scene, they only recommend 50.
Yeah.
So, but if you have it open ended, then you could do a little more pressure.
Let me know before you need to get rid of some, because I have a fire truck that needs some.
You don't have a fire truck. If you want 4-inch, we have a few lengths out there now by the station.
I'll be glad.
So my only point is, I don't think we should throw them away because I think there are times where you use it for dopey things like that as just pumping versus.
Yeah.
We have a place to store them. You know,
Yeah, it'd be like get rid of them, but maybe whether it's front porch forum or here, like I'm sure people would take them first. My only point is to avoid throwing them into the trash on the landfill.
okay. So, but in all seriousness, for those people watching the recording at home, oh, Lisa, go ahead, then I'll do my point.
Okay, thanks. Just a question for Jerry. Jerry, that equipment that MSA gifted to us, did that help reduce any of your capital costs, or was it not enough?
No, because that would come out of just the equipment purchase, not the capital. So MSA gave us the citizen hoods for the interior firefighters, but we have enough now, so every firefighter has one to help in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jerry.
So my question, just because not everybody who's watching this via Mount Mansfield Community TV's website or Facebook will know what our plans are. We are putting $220,000 more in the capital reserve because that's going toward the next truck. So could we just clarify for our voters what that next truck is and when it's scheduled?
Okay, we actually have 2 trucks coming.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new utility truck with a pump that we voted on a year ago. And that should be here, not next spring, but the spring after.
Okay, so can you highlight that one?
Which one, you know?
Is that the brush truck?
That's a brush truck, so
Okay.
it says 200,000. That's
Okay.
what
We're seeing the FY25 payment after that, the 267.
Okay, so we didn't increase the reserve in the budget for that. We did it for the line number 10. Is that correct?
Rescue truck.
Okay, so we chipped in more toward that because the projected cost of that came in higher than we expected. Is that right? Do I have that right, Jerry?
No, the rescue truck won't be here for 3 years.
Okay, the reason I'm guessing asking is why did we have to increase the money in the budget for the reserve over what we had? Is it because something is coming in more expensive?
I think a bit of it is more expensive, but also, if I recall, we looked at some of this in years prior, and we kind of had it in the capital plan. Where's the taxes line, Connie? So taxes, was this what, or taxes?
Okay, so we just grabbed the number from there, irrespective of.
Well, this is part of the plan to say, by FY27, we're going to have $471,900 that we owe on that truck. So how much do we need to increase into that capital plan here? So this is the line reserved from taxes. So we look at how much we need to increase each year.
So the increase was always planned, and it's not because of a cost coming in higher.
Right.
Okay.
You guys approved $604,000. And right now, if we bought the truck tomorrow, it's down to $585,000. So we have to pay for the chassis when it gets here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's $142,000.
Right.
Scroll up.
Within
I have a note in there.
30 days of when it's delivered. And then we have to pay the balance of the truck is $471,000.
So the whole point of this capital reserve fund business is to try to level out what our budget is so that we don't have a spike in one year where we're behind.
And we're also making Roger Brown happy.
And we're avoiding paying interest. Yeah, we're avoiding paying interest.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But so if we go back down to the bottom of the capital plan number. So next year, following what we're doing, we should see the amount of money contributed from the budget to be flat because the next year calls also for $225,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure that people watching this who have not spent the decades that for example, Jeff just spent 2 days on this. Somebody watching this who doesn't know all that would probably go, I don't understand. So hopefully this helps people watching understand. It's not easy for people who don't do this for a living. Pardon?
One other comment I make, total reserves on row 56, if you follow that, it sort of builds up and then you spend it and it drops down and then builds up again. So the tax are kind of flat. There's an up and down on the reserves based on substantial purchases at various points.
And as we get further along, then we'll also include, I have a page that ties all the different departments together.
Mhm.
And the objective is over all departments to try to keep the reserve contribution on a slow incline, like Jeff said, but to keep the reserve total of all our reserve balances about the same. When you look at that, you can say, oh, this one just dropped down to
But this
18, but this one went way up because their purchase isn't until the next year.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody about fire stuff? Jerry, did you have anything else you wanted to comment on?
No, thank you all for everything done for us.
And Jerry, will we see you tomorrow at 4? Here? Will we see you here tomorrow at 4?
Taco. Yeah. I gotta go pick up a truck up in Allegiance tomorrow,
Taco Wednesday.
about 4:00. So after we get back, we'll be here.
Okay, Karen has a question.
Oh, I have a comment. Jerry, thank you for helping out while Chief Guile is down. I really appreciate you putting in the extra effort and time on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is
Please,
police. Okay. Now, this is a topic about which I'm sure there's many opinions. We have, well, Josh, I hate doing this. I'm gonna let you, or Connie, you guys go over this. I don't need to do it.
So-
You're the expert.
Yeah, I think as you led off with, we could talk a very long time about the police budget. And what we did right now was essentially level fund it from FY23 or 24 to 25, knowing there's a lot of question marks. We could in 25 have some officers, but still have a chief agreement and patrol services agreement with Heinsberg. We could be moving even more towards shared services with Heinsberg. We could make the decision in June that we're going to go back to hiring our own chief and having officers here. So there's a lot of variables and unknowns that we're probably not going to answer before the end of this budget cycle. So my thought was, well, we're going to spend money on policing one way or another, whether it's with Heinsberg or with our own or a combination of that. So at least to started with a flatline position to say, well, that gives us some money. We do note that there's about $390,000 of direct savings from the police department from last year to this year. So as Connie mentioned earlier, in the revenue side, we put $500,000 as an offset. That could increase, and that is one way to make sure that we're being conscious of the fact that we may not, likely won't spend the full amount of the police department budget.
Okay. Questions from the board? Jeff.
I have a few. I support that. I think that's a prudent thing to do, is to level fund it while we figure things out.
While we work things out.
I would appreciate Chief Cambridge's input as to, what we hope to expect. I think where our flexibility might be is in how many officers we hire, and I think that's probably still up in the air. We have budgeted in the past for 5, including a chief, I think.
4 officers and a
Four
chief,
officers
and some
chief.
part-timers.
We may or may not get there this coming year, depending on hires. But I think that we're at such a different dynamic now by combining the staffing in both departments, we have the opportunity to have more coverage and better coverage with, perhaps 2
By sharing the over, yeah.
at any given time. That will have a budgetary impact, whether we contract or, hire, which I hope we do. But so that we might get some help on that. I would point out on row 101 and 102, this equipment. it's likely that we're going to probably will be
Yes.
spending some money in those areas. I'm not quite clear on item number 106, public
Well,
relations.
I just want to qualify 101. This is not the budget cycle that we're in. It's the next one. I think a lot of the projected equipment expenses will probably be hitting this year's budget.
Yeah.
Not that I'm just saying, I mean, it's one of those great unknowns. If you have a crystal ball, I want to borrow it. But right now, I think the big hit's going to probably be this year as we get our equipment up to where it should be.
We'll need to buy stuff in this fiscal year, I think.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. I don't know what public relations is.
Yep, that was a suggestion of Chief Cambridge. She says it in the Heinsberg budget, they've got a lot of public relations. So it's items like logoed items they might give away at like a big truck day or a fair or school visits, more community policing type things.
Oh yeah, I think he dressed up as the Easter Bunny one year.
Yeah, they have a Grinch costume, I think, as well.
Whatever happened to Gruff the Crime Dog?
So things like that would probably go away. The fire department, he's left, frequently has some items like that they use to give away when they go to like fire awareness days at schools and things like that.
Okay.
Also, it's every year we buy the Halloween candy,
Yay.
and they've always put it under office supplies. That's never sat well with me. And Chief Cambridge agreed. He's like, no, you need a public relations line.
Okay, that's
So we're kind of just unbundling it.
Art?
So I'm just struck that there are things we know, the things we know we don't know, and things we don't know here, right? And so part of this is what's going to happen with hiring, and associated with that are cruisers and health insurance and equipment. But to your point, as we hire people, officers, they have to have the right equipment, including vests that are vested fit. I learned recently, I never knew this, that vests have a 5-year lifespan, right? So that's another example of asset management for the police department.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be wearing outdated vests. Last I knew, firearms, like the barrel of a firearm wears out after something like 3,000 to 5,000 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so
if you're doing your training, that
at some point you need to either replace the barrel or the entire firearm. So there are some things for equipment. To be fair, though, the cruisers are at the price of a cruiser. The other stuff starts to look modest, 1,000, 2,000 hours per item. But it's all related to hiring and onboarding folks.
So it's funny you said that about the guns, because Chief Cambridge was talking about how much do you allow for new guns each year? Like, we've never done that. And then I thought about it. It's like, I've been here 10 years. I've never seen an officer that's been here for 5 years that it had to be replaced.
Right. So my understanding is they're supposed to be inspected every year, and somebody looks at the wear and says, this is still in service. Nope, this one has to be replaced. Issues about which firearm can use personal firearms. Does it have to be a town supplied firearm? I mean, there are policy issues that are associated with this. One thing I wanted to raise, and because I look at things randomly sometimes, like I still read like the physical Burlington Free Press. I'm not really sure why as time goes by.
Because if you stop, they call up and cry.
But I will say, when you look at the classified ads, many towns, including our own, recruit at either in the Free Press or 7 Days. It is really common for police departments to have hiring bonuses of $5,000 to $15,000.
Now, question, is that's not payable the day you start, it's payable after a probationary period,
The
right?
one that I saw said half is paid the day you start and half is paid after a year. And I don't have an opinion about any of that. I just posed the question of does it merit contemplating hiring bonuses when it would appear that virtually every other town and the state police have hiring bonuses for officers.
I've looked at Chief Cambridge for advice on that.
So I guess that's a question mark I put here because he's not here today, right? That I'm interested before we get to the final of do we want to contemplate hiring bonuses as we need to hire a bunch of people?
This has come up in the past, and and multiple times now since I've been here. And we've always thought about it kind of as a snake oil thing, but it always seemed to make sense to me. I mean, you want the best competitive advantage you've got in a very seller's market.
I just go to comparable. So if Williston's doing it, Burlington's doing it, South Burlington, the state police.
Yeah, we can't really say, well, we have cool decals on our cars. That's not going to cut
We
it.
have a couple of candidates that are interested right now. So I don't know.
I just put it out there. Like, and
I think it's a good idea.
opinion, but I think we ought to call the question.
Karen?
I support signing bonuses. I agree with that. Not all paid up front, of course, because that'd be silly. But
Lasted a week.
But I do not support level funding the police department right now, and this is my reasoning. And I hope you can open your minds to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
The taxpayers right now are getting police services paid for out of a police budget that we just saw $390,000 savings on a $750,000 budget. So is that what we're up to? I'm sorry, I don't know the bottom.
Was that the
Well, we're at 710. I'm sorry, I rounded up. Because I'm assuming signing bonuses. So say 710,390. That is over half the budget was saved in FY23 from what we're doing for policing in FY23, which is going to continue on to FY24 that you fully funded. So my request, you will have unallocated funds left over from FY24 from the police department. Budget in FY25 at 50% off of what you've got right here, since you had over a 50% savings, with the assumption that we don't know what's going to happen yet, but we always have unallocated funds in the background. Don't keep overtaxing us, telling us you're going to give us all these services when you don't control if people are going to come work here. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm saying the taxpayer out there is watching what you're going to do on this. And say, we cut it in half for right now. We've got unallocated to use in FY25 if we need to. But we're not going to keep taxing you for 3 years in a row for a service we're not giving you, or for 5 years in a row for a service you're not giving you, because we haven't had a full police force for over 5 years.
Okay, Connie?
Which is why the $500,000 is on the next page.
I don't care about the 500.
Josh didn't.
Well,
Josh,
let me make this very, very clear.
wait,
Your unallocated
Kara,
funds that have built
I
up.
was talking.
Yeah, but you're confusing the matter.
okay, we're going to take turns. Connie, go ahead.
So what Josh is presenting doesn't have notes on the side. What I have in mind does have exactly that note, and it accounts for the savings that we had last year as part of that 500,000 going right back at the budget. So we're not raising more tax dollars to do that.
You're overstating.
Wait, Connie, let's wait till.
I think it's good to go through the whole thing, and as you find when we get through the revenue page, the way it stands right now, there's less than a 1% increase, and we have more unassigned funds that we can throw at it.
Okay, so we intend to spend this money, but we don't intend to use taxes to pay for it. Is essentially, it sounds like what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah, I think you could look at it. So there's 500,000 on the revenue side. So if we cut this in half, we could keep that 500,000, have a tax decrease, or we could take 350 out of the 500,000, and then we're sort of at the same level. So I think it's just a different way to look at it.
Well, I do
increase revenue or decrease expenses.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Well, I do agree philosophically with what Kara is saying. Year over year over year, we keep putting money aside, and there's a part of me that says, we know we're not going to spend it. Now, we know at the end of the day, we're going to use that money for something else, but why don't we just say right off the front, instead of saying money waterfalls from police money we don't spend, it goes over to this bucket, and then this bucket, we spend it on this. Whatever this winds up being, why didn't we just budget for that in the first place? But Connie's sitting here nodding because it sounds like you've got that planned.
Well, right. And also keep in mind this flatlining is just a placeholder. It's like Josh and I went back and forth. It's like, well, do we carry those numbers over? Will it be more confusing, less confusing? Initially, I just put the total at the bottom and left the whole column blank.
Okay.
But we felt either way we did it, somebody's going to be confused.
Okay, so Kara, your turn.
It's having false information known. Okay, because for five, Jeff,
I
wait,
take
please.
exception with the term false information
Okay,
because it
let me
implies
finish. If
somebody
you
not
let me finish,
telling the truth.
like you let everybody else has to finish, I'll further explain what I mean by that. Repeatedly, you saw before how your unallocated funds have continued to build, even though you use some of it as revenue to be able to justify inaccurate numbers. These numbers are inaccurate because it's been proven for the history, based on your historical spending. Your historical spending is what you build a budget off from, not by what you think you might have, because you've already said you don't know. You can't predict the future. Well, you can predict the future based on some of your past, your history. And so it appears to be, I'm just letting you know from the taxpayer standpoint, it appears to be like a shell game. We're going to say, we're going to put all these numbers up here for our dream full police department. We haven't had a full police department in 5 years. So the taxpayer is starting to ask questions. They're starting to say, like, wait a second. Why are you putting all these numbers here? Why aren't you giving a true accounting for what you think is going to be here? That's all I'm saying, because you could put increased numbers everywhere else on the budget.
Okay, I'm going to let Bard go next, and then Jeff. Bard, go ahead.
So, I think to some degree this is irresolvable. And I will say my perception is influenced and perhaps biased by my experience in state government, where state government does actually budget for 100% of the appropriated positions. So in my former department, something like 350 employees for the year, budgeted 350 employees. There was never a year in which 350 positions were filled. And so at the end of every year, there's excess revenues, there's ups and downs. A lot of it is, there's not just staff, there are other costs. And so every year there's this resolution. There is a closeout that happens typically within a month of the end of the fiscal year. And then the executive branch makes decisions about where it goes, similar to this, to other future expenses. I'm a taxpayer also. I've been a taxpayer for longer than many of the people in the room. And I don't find it a shell game. I just think it's how the economics and math work. I think it's arbitrary whether we say we're going to reduce the budget and then hold some reserve money in case we go over budget, or we keep the budget as is and offset it with unspent revenues from previous years. I think we probably end up in a similar place. And I understood that before I was on the select board. I'm sure there are people who don't understand it or don't agree with it, but it appears to me we end up somewhat in the same place. And I appreciate the question of, I don't want to overtax people and just generate money and have that 1 million turn into 2 million, turn into 10 million. That is a key point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think from my perspective, the key issue is what's the right figure to have for a fund balance, and for budget expenses, what do we carry forward from a previous year to offset needed tax revenue? And it's my observation that virtually any staffing pattern, when you budget at 100%, very few times does any department hit 100%, unless it's a few people who never leave.
David, how about you? You've been in this job quite a while. Your thoughts?
I mean, this is the first run through where we're putting numbers in and finding out where it goes. We're spending too much time labeling exactly what this figure is.
I can kind of see that there may be a point of view that says, if you know that dodos have gone extinct, there's no point in budgeting for dodo hunting equipment.
Right.
Because unless you have a theory that dodos are going to come back. That's, we're kind of hunting officers we don't expect to actually get. We're hoping they will. But to Bard's point, that's a fairly common budgeting practice. And Connie does, we're not saying that we have to raise $710,000 in taxes to pay for this. This is just the budgeted amount that we then turn around and reduce through existing unassigned revenue. So Connie, I'm going to let the ball go back to you to wrap this part of the discussion up, because I think we've otherwise hit just about everything.
This is just all so dependent on what transpires over the next month and a half. I mean, we got to the end of December to figure out what we're doing with the police department. I have everything ready to go and start plugging real numbers. But whether I'm hoping by the time we get to the end that maybe we can say, okay, the wage line can come down this much, but the contracted services with Heinsberg has to go up.
Right.
That is not even in here right now. So it's like, will it come out even? Will it come out a little less? I don't know, but I'm hoping I have more guidance from you guys at the December financial meeting, so then I can go back and say, okay, this is what you want me to plug.
Okay, so that's important to note, the thing about contracted services not actually here. So this is not a final result.
No.
Okay, Bard.
Just a comment, for those of you who recall our history with communications with Heinsberg about a joint police department.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of started them, we put them on hold pending the Heinsberg work on a strategic plan, which I thought was supposed to be done in September. So October.
Last I asked was almost getting closer.
Well, I just want to call that out because it's another thing of the things we know we don't know. Like, what did that say? What are we going to resurrect that conversation? And does that end up with us in a joint department in a couple of years, which might influence our decisions and approach on the budget for 25, which, to be fair, is still 7 months away, 8 months away, whatever it is.
Yes, it's almost October.
I think that the current arrangement with Joint Chief Services is going to back us into a joint department faster than the way we'd expected, because yeah, I mean, it's going to be a joint department in all but official names by the time this gets done, I think.
And that could impact a whole bunch of things. How do we pay benefits?
Right, and the collective
a lot of
bargaining
our
is going to be
payroll
tough.
lines can come down, but another line may go up.
Yeah, I think contracted services would be good to be in this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one unrelated question. On the community outreach, we've got $10,000. We still have not had a satisfactory presentation by Howard Mental Health on what we get out of the community outreach. How many?
No, we did actually get something about, it may have been about 2 years ago, but I do remember we did get one.
This year we got a presentation that was,
Oh no, that was completely indecipherable. I know that one.
and
Right.
so like, I mean, and I'm curious what, how many people in Richmond take advantage of it, and what
Right.
does it do?
Well, there's community outreach and there's first call, but they do have those numbers. We can probably just call up and ask, but we don't want that guy to present again. I thought he was on medication.
So I have a suggestion, Jay. First, I think for this line item, because if you were not paying attention to meetings like this, you wouldn't know what that means.
Right.
Maybe we should put community outreach like HC, Howard Center, something like that, just to make it a little more.
I agree.
transparent.
I agree.
Because otherwise, like, I don't know, it looks like marketing or something.
Yeah, right.
And then the other thing I'd say is, I think it is prudent to look again at what services are provided. Karen, others have raised this thing. What are like services we're paying for and what are we getting? So we know what we're paying for and what is provided to our citizens is worth asking and getting updated information. So I think that's something to ask Howard Center for to come back at some point.
Okay. Good. Ariana Matthews. Thank you, Ariana. We'll be getting that hopefully shortly. Okay, so our next agenda item after the police.
Could you just check with the chief, Jay, on the Howard Center stuff too? Because he did bring that up to you guys too. So it's not just Howard Center, but the chief also commented on the services of what they worked together on.
Okay, Josh, we'll get that.
Yeah, you should have some feedback on what we're getting for that.
Similarly with
I will just, Yeah, I would like to say that the Howard Center likes to talk all the time about their community outreach and how it's available to help link people to services, not just mental health. I have a chain of emails am I along with them pointing out that nowhere on their website is there anything whatsoever about the community outreach program, and I'm not making that up. Try and find it. I said, if you're going to talk about this great program, maybe you should tell people it exists. And they're like, well, we'll talk to our webmasters about that. And the webmasters are going to be like, we will put up whatever you want us to put up.
That's what webmasters do.
That's right. So it's like that. That's something that I'd like to very much, if we're going to keep funding community outreach with the Howard Center, I want them to tell people it exists and not just wait for police officers to tell people about it. Because right now, my sense is that that's essentially 100% of how people are being told.
And then they should be putting on their webpage.
Right. But I mean, honest to gosh, the first call is everywhere, but first call is different from community outreach. First call is we have a mental health crisis. Community outreach is I am trying to find a way to pay my mortgage. I'm about to be evicted. Oh, well, did you know there's this program that the state has? And it doesn't do any good to have trained professionals who are sitting around playing spider solitaire if people still do that. If people are out there needing it but don't know about it.
Or an example, perhaps there's an unhoused person. Is it worth reaching out to them to say, can we put them up with services?
Right. You know, that's actually a very good point. We've been hearing a lot lately about parking by the water tank. I have not met this person who's been parking at the water tank, but that would be an example of it. Instead of just saying we don't want their kind there, could community outreach meet with that person? So I think everybody who's saying, while we respect the Howard Center, and I've worked with them for years through NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, I think we could be getting a lot more bang for our buck by just targeting instead of just saying, well, they're out there. Because, well, on the other hand, you have to remember the debacle that's Burlington these days. Compared to Burlington, we have no problems. But that said, we shouldn't be funding something we're not getting any benefit from.
So the question I would have is the Howard Center the right people to be providing the service that we're looking for? Might there be a different model that might work better? You know, I don't know. It's a possibility.
Maybe we can contract with Washington County Mental Health Services and have them come over.
Or maybe a multi-town, social worker.
I'm sure Washington County Mental Health has tons of free time, right?
Oh yeah, we got employees just playing spider solitaire.
Yeah, I think the agencies are at 20 to 40% vacancies, so
That is unfortunately true.
Yeah.
Okay.
are we on?
Okay, we're on the highway, recreation, and trails.
Josh, would you like to take us to the next item?
Sure. We'll go to recreation and trails first. Yeah. Okay. So just a reminder here that sort of the biggest difference budget from last year to this year is the Conservation Reserve Fund. That's voted on as a separate ballot item. So we've always removed that. So that's why it looks like we've got a 70% decrease. If we added that in, we'd be closer to level funded.
Could we put that elsewhere in the budget? Is what you're saying?
No. So the Conservation Reserve Fund, since that's voted on by the voters.
Oh, we can't budget it.
We can't budget it until they actually vote it in. So
Right.
it looks like it's about a $78,000 or $80,000 decrease, but if that gets voted back in, it'll be pretty much level funded.
So, I looked at this specifically today, and I'm wondering if anyone recalls why we do it as a separate line item on the warning as a 1 cent thing. Is there?
It has to do with how it was created
I
under,
think there is a political history to that.
I thought
I think, state statute.
state statute drove it. And so we had to, and I think we were doing it for too many years in a row, so it had to
Right.
come on yearly.
Yeah, but why could this not be a budgeted line item?
Because we can't go to the voters and say, we want you to pay for something for this year and the next 4 years.
Like, we could put it in a
only go
reserve.
out a year.
We do that for fire trucks. you know, so like, why couldn't we do it for conservation reserve?
Because the fire truck, they approve a bond for us to buy the truck at that meeting. To spend the money out 5 years.
Could I just ask, is your point that you don't want to vote on it, that you want to have it part of the budget?
Well, I think 1 cent, this, to my mind, the $30,000 increase on this line item is a lot. And, you know, I'm not sure it's warranted, you know, so it's been $50,000 for a while now. And that seems reasonable to me, you know, this is kind of it's a windfall because we did a reappraisal.
So it strikes me that if I put these sort of points together, your point is that the conservation fund, it's not about the voting, it's about the amount.
Yeah.
So it is possible to put forward an article that's less than a cent.
Yes.
You know, we could do that.
It's
You know,
3/4 or whatever. What would it be?
That's actually a very good point, Jeff. Thank you for bringing that up. I had not thought of that.
I agree with Jeff.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for a community kumbaya.
So Jeff, we did a lot of looking into how we set up about 4 years ago, and Carrie's recalling correctly. I think you said that like we were committing for too long and we couldn't do that. I'll look back at those notes and see, I think there might be something in the way the reserve fund set up that it has to be a separate ballot item, but I can't recall right now. I'll dig back in to see what we can do. But you're right. I think we could drop that on the ballot and see what we want to do.
So my point is, for the purpose of this budget, which would then drive the language of the article, what should our target for the conservation fund be? And if it's about $50,000, we could reverse the equation to say, what is the tax rate going to be to hit about $50,000?
I mean, that makes sense to me. You know, I mean, there isn't a logical, you know, there's not a pressing reason for it to jump that much.
Yeah.
And you know, my concern is with that big a jump, that, you know, people might vote it down, you know, because it's just, you know, so, and, you know, the people I've talked to get that they're not looking for a windfall,
Right.
but we, you know, it has been very productively used. But
Lisa?
Yeah, I got to lodge my annual objection to fireworks funding by the town. I think it's, I'm personally opposed to it. So that's where I stand.
so, okay.
Jay, before we move to fireworks, what is our next step? Could we ask Connie to calculate what would it take to hit about 50 cents? And it's going to be like 0.6 cents or something.
I don't know if we have a say in it. I think it goes back to how the reserve was first created, voted upon, and restricted.
You think it's mandated at 1 cent? I'll look back into that, and then if getting to
directly
50,000, we
tied to
can
grant
calculate.
lists.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look back at the charter there.
Okay.
So, you know, I think there isn't a logical reason to me that there's a nexus between the grand list and how much money we raise. It just happens to be that. So whatever way, you know, I think we do have to look at statutes.
It may be one of those things that has to be go through, get voted against, and then everything changes.
Or voted in a
It
different
used to
way.
be part of the budget.
Okay.
Wow.
Kara?
My question when you're looking into it is, can the amount be changed? Because we're voting on it annually. Can we not vote on it for 1 year since you've got twice as much the year before? Can you just see exactly what we're required to do? And what we can or cannot change? That would be great to know, because, you know, I think other people have commented to me too, Jeff, on that. They still want to see some go, but because the grand list was increased, now there's this a lot more money going into the conservation fund. So
Unanticipated consequence.
well, thank you for checking into that.
Okay.
So Jay, I don't want to lose Lisa's point. Do you want to discuss further July 4th fireworks? Quick reminder, this used to sit kind of outside,
Right.
and then it kind of imploded and was brought inside.
Right. We had a group of very wonderful people who spent years privately raising money through coin drops and other donations to pay for it. And as we all do, they have gotten older and some of them have passed on, and they said, we simply can't do this. If the town does not bring this into their budget or something like that, it will simply stop. And that's what we wound up with. The money that we raised last year through a coin drop and the GoFundMe, which we will not use again because it made Connie's life hell because of the way GoFundMe reports out money, was not used for the fireworks. It was used for all the other expenses. The thing about fireworks, it's an annual issue with people that it scares the devil out of dogs and leaves them impacted sometimes for weeks or months, which I'm completely sympathetic toward. Unfortunately, the answer that a lot of people have for it is, well, there's this thing called quiet fireworks. Quiet fireworks do not exist in the sense that people think. They're not big sparklers that don't make noise because they're explosives. Explosives make noise. Quiet fireworks are those that they put up between the big bangers, the ones that go up and go sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Right. Those are the quiet fireworks. And a show made up completely of those. People have tried it. And people have, the residents have gone berserk when they get told, no, that was the show. So unfortunately, we're in a position where a very large majority of the town appears to want something that is unfortunately very cruel to a small minority of the town. And I'm sympathetic to that. I just don't have an answer. It does, however, Sue Glennon, who is the chair of the fireworks committee, has informed us that the rate, well, North Star Fireworks, which has been our vendor for many years, their crews are aging out. They're having a hard time hiring employees, and they're going to be having to say no to a lot of towns. And so we are going to be having to contract sooner rather than later for this amount. And I think that $15,000 is what Sue told us she was going to need, right?
Right, we went less last year because the committee gave us what they had left in their account.
Right. So if we want fireworks, unfortunately, again, it's a seller's market. And if anybody wants an exciting new side career as a pyrotechnician, this is your chance.
I thought they had to be contracted like basically in July.
Let me check.
December last year, wasn't it? December or January last year?
Yeah, and it's. I think Sue said we should be coming back to it about now. I'm going to reach out to Sue. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yeah, good discussion. I do wonder about drone shows. I mean, I've seen a few recently in the last few years that are they're way over the top as far as what fireworks can do. I mean, they're really interesting. They make shapes, they move around. Of course, they're pretty quiet. I don't have any idea what they cost. Now we'll look into that and I'll report back.
I had not heard of drone shows, but I'm Googling it, and that's interesting.
They've done some at some really big, like New Year's Eve festivals, like New York City. I mean, that's a little out of our league, but the idea is that these drones can be programmed to synchronize their actions, and it's really impressive. They're all lit up, and they go all over the place, and it's a kind of thing that's the opposite of fireworks. It's almost a choreography. So instead of a bunch of banging noises, I mean, I like fireworks as far, I'm a chem engineer. I've made pyrotechnics myself, and launched them. They worked.
Okay.
But these days, I think the world has moved on. So I'll look into the drones.
The rabbit hole of sharing a webpage about these things, but I'm not going to in the interest of time. But if you want to Google drone shows, I'm like, holy cow, those are interesting. Jeff?
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to wade into the discussion of what kind of entertainment we should have, but I would like to talk about the money.
Okay.
So one of the things that my understanding is that traditionally the fireworks committee has done as far as vendors goes is that they charge vendors a very nominal amount to park on our green and serve,
Right. We've already discussed raising that a good bit.
So, I think that should be a revenue line item. And my guess is that how many, Jay, do you know how many vendors we get?
I have it in a document somewhere. Stephanie Hartsfield had that. I don't have it committed to memory. We were charging vendors. I mean, we did bring in money from vendors. I just can't give you an exact number, but it can be gotten. We can get that before next meeting.
Okay. So, I would be interested in hearing that proposal of what would be comparable, because it's quite a few people. We get between 5,000 and 10,000 people easily on 4th of July.
Right. We were not really, to be totally honest, we were not really satisfied with their vendors last year. Many of them left very much earlier than they were supposed to, because as you may recall, there was that rain shower and everybody left and our vendors took off. And so we were expecting vendors to be there till evening and boom, they were gone. Yep.
You know, as I hear that sort of revenue and performance, that's the kind of thing that you could put into an agreement, some form of contract. You're going to pay us X dollars and you're going to be here from this time to that time.
Right. I thought we had that in there, to be honest. I think someone just ignored it.
And if that's possible, in which case, like, well, you're not welcome back, right?
Well, that's actually one of the things we're looking into. The firms that basically did that, like the Bouncy Fort people. Well, we're not going to repeat the entire meeting history of the last July 4th meeting, but yes, looking at our relationship with vendors, what kind of vendors, which vendors, and what we're going to spend money on. For example, the big expensive, the karaoke show worked, the music all afternoon didn't. We're looking at trying to get the best bang for our buck, and we've learned lessons from last year.
Maybe we get some money from the trailer.
Well, if you want to take over, that's the thing is we have a trailer. We have two trailers. We have the trailer that we store the July 4th supplies in. That's not the one we're trying to sell. We also have what we call the fry wagon, and the fry wagon has completely usable, recently rewired fryolators in there, but no one seems to want to take the initiative to say, here's how much it should cost and work with Duncan to get it listed. And I have enough going on. I don't want to do that.
Is it not going for bid like a car?
That's exactly what it should be going for, but we haven't like put the information together, written it all up, handed Josh and Duncan some photos and say, here, list it. And
I'll help you do that in the spring because that's when it will sell. You don't sell it before you go into the winter months when nobody can make any money off of it.
Could we move it from the parking lot?
Where is it?
It's right here.
well, no, is that the fry wagon or is that just our storage trailer? That's just our storage trailer.
Is that a fireworks trailer?
That's where we do, but we keep everything else in there too, like the traffic cones and vests. And
I mean,
he doesn't want it back behind. Well, actually, is the fry wagon behind the highway department again?
Yeah, that's where it was.
Yeah,
it would probably be good to get out of there before the snow flies. But anyways, so something you might want to look into is a comparable event, to my mind, is the Harvest Festival in Underhill.
Mm-hmm.
Has about that many people, and it's a small town. So, and they have vendors. You might see, do comparables of what.
That's a good point.
Charge for.
Do you know when that is? Because I've never actually made it there.
Oh, it's huge. It's a big thing. No,
I don't doubt that. Just, has it happened yet?
I have no idea.
I missed it. I was in Guam or.
I went to it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, well,
it just happened. And it's about the same size.
We could reach out to organizers and say, what vendors did you work with? Sure. Anyway, we're basically recapping the July 4th meeting. From a standpoint of the budget item, that's the fireworks. That's everything you see there is the fireworks. Everything else we got to raise through donations. So the firework cost is a firework cost, and I'll reach out to Sue to make sure that we do have the right number. I don't think there's anything left to talk about there. And trails, the only thing about recreation trails and the conservation fund is the Andrews Community Forest Committee has gotten advice from our town zoning administrator, Tyler Mesha, very specifically laying out the framework for what they're going to legally have to do before they can begin constructing trails. Some actual engineering, professional engineering is going to be required. They're going to have to pay for that. And that's going to be coming out of the conservation fund. But I would imagine that they're going to try to get that paid for this fiscal year. And so we don't really need to budget for that. But we would, assuming that we get the engineering plans and that any trail construction starts, the 24-25 fiscal year, this fiscal year that we're working on might be the year some of that starts. And right now we don't have a ton, let's see, trail maintenance, $1,000.
Well, there's also the Andrews Community Forest Fund, right?
That's right. And that's a different fund. You're absolutely right.
I think there's a lot, there are different pots of money to do.
Right.
There's a lot of
different. But this is trails other than the ACF trails. And we haven't been spending much of that money to begin with. So
the fair amount of damage that was done on the Beacon.
Yes. And actually that's a good point. They're out there working on that.
That could also come from the conservation.
Right. Okay. So I think we beat this one to death.
Well, there are a couple of items here that I think would be worth somebody thinking about. So we now have two committees that are, think about volunteers green. We've got the rec committee and we've got the new parks committee. I personally, I would be receptive to hearing what a reasonable maintenance cost would be for the parks and for recreation improvement. It's one of the complaints that we heard on the ARPA committee is these parks have not been maintained well. And part of the reason for that is that there hasn't been oversight to say, well, this is what we need to do.
Right.
There's no reason to have picnic tables that are decrepit.
Right.
Just somebody needs to do that.
Right. And we took for granted that Pete in his infinite free time could do the highway department job and that was unreasonable. The gardening committee and the parks committee, between them, beautification is planting flowers and things is the gardening committee, but everything else, like there's places we could use resodding, and I don't see anywhere in here that we would put sod. So we could be spending and budgeting and putting in a capital plan on how often do we want to have new picnic tables bought for the park.
So I would think that either the recreation committee or the volunteer green Browns Court committee or both of them, if they come up with any kind of proposal, they should also come up with a proposal of what it's going to take to maintain them.
Kara.
Just to give you a heads up, the recreation committee has been informed that they have basically two line items that they were unaware of, which was the park maintenance line item, as well as the recreation equipment line item. And in the past 3 years, they've had $17,500 that they haven't spent. So that's gone into the unallocated fund. So when Jeff talked about having, us replacing a bench or a picnic table should be part of annual review of that kind of thing, they've now been made aware of that. So I think you might have some use of these funds that haven't been used in the past 3 years going to be looked at being used moving forward. And I think the combination of what's going on with your new committee and your rec committee, you might find that they might need to increase some of these numbers, or they might come to you to use some unallocated funds to get them caught up to having a level of like trash cans that Jeff said he doesn't want ARPA money used for. They might get caught up for you. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. They were unaware that they had line items in the budget to propose work being done.
Okay, Lisa, I'm going to apologize. I missed your hand. Lisa should have been called on first.
I'll do this next time. Okay. Yeah, Jay, I just want to say one thing. Talking about recreation, I went to the last recreation meeting, and they were kind of dithering about what kind of maintenance needs Volunteers Green has and some other and park equipment and all that stuff. I said, look, folks, don't try to figure out what that stuff will cost. Figure out what's needed, and then give us a list, and we can combine it with other departments that have needs for mowing or for pruning, painting, and then we can attach. We can come up with a cost for that, and then recycle that to the recreation committee. And however it's going to be done, probably should be done by whether it's our own crews or a contractor doing maintenance for more than just Volunteers Green. If there's mowing here and mowing there, let's have somebody do it. It's usually better cost when you get it all in one bucket. So anyway, I hope, and I'll keep attending those meetings and see what they come up with. And if Brown's Court Committee comes up with something similar for they need weed whacking, they need mowing, whatever, let's put all those together and try to get a better unit price on it.
Okay, that's an excellent point.
They should be made aware that the time to come up with those costs is now.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know when the next rec meeting is. Pretty soon, I think. Anyhow, yeah. So Jeff, too, if you want to just informally pass it on to Brown's Court and Volunteers Green, those two committees or committee. Let's see if we can get something going. I don't know. Where are we under maintenance? $3,000. That's not insignificant amount of money.
And then don't forget the recreation equipment, $3,000.
So that might be enough. Right.
At least to get, right. Thanks, Kara. At least to get something going, and then, we'll kind of get the hang of it next year.
And the new domed stadium for the Little League.
The 3,000 will
It's in the charitable.
Get the paper.
Okay. Tara, and then let's move on to the next item.
Do you have a line item maybe for the gardening committee to be able to buy flowers or do landscaping?
We should have one because we did tell them that they could come to us with requests, and we presume that they will.
So
In
maybe
fact, they already have, but we paid for it out of unallocated funds. So that's a good point.
it's anywhere in this budget that you can build in, like, I don't know if you call it landscaping or
Beautification, yeah.
Administration budget for the landscape and maintenance line, $1,500. I don't know. That's what that would be.
I think perhaps we should, when we get there, we should consider making that more because plants cost money.
thank you. I appreciate that. And just
Thank you, Jim.
letting everybody know that general fund is to be used all around town. Thank you.
Right, there's
Also
actually,
for Mary Hull's bulbs. Sorry.
right.
Okay.
Right, well, we haven't licensed Mary to begin growing cannabis, but when that happens,
I mean,
If we provide the bulbs and seeds for her, that kind of heads that one off. You know, here's your seeds. They're not viable, but whatever.
are we done with Rankin Trails?
I think we are.
Highway?
Let's get on the highway. Okay, Josh, Connie.
Sure. So highway, there really weren't too many major changes to any of these regular lines. There was a few minor adjustments to make sure we better match FY23 actuals. Couple of things we did do was adjusted retreatment and gravel and aggregate to match road maintenance for FY25. Both were actually reduced. Pete's got pretty good plans of how many roads he's going to touch each year. So he really budgeted accordingly. Highway capital reserve was increased to plan for purchasing equipment without loans, similar to the fire truck, ties back to the capital plan. And then the bridge and culvert reserve was increased to plan for a few upcoming projects that Pete knows he's going to look at bridges and culverts.
Okay, so,
Bottom line.
so one thing that I'm sure I'm the only select board member who gets questions about this. Is expensive on traffic control measures. As we all know, the new traffic speed bumps near the round church were extremely popular with some people and extremely unpopular with others. But many people said, could they not have been tables instead of bumps, which are more gradual and do not jar people as much? The people at the eastern end of Cochrane Road are about ready to storm the castle to get theirs. And I understand where that's coming from. We've got $10,000 there. And that way, actually, we have nothing in there right now. It was $10,000, and right now we are not allocating anything.
Yeah, I think that was because in the last budget cycle, we knew we had a few things we wanted to do. We didn't know exactly what it was going to be. So we put $10,000 in there to pay for what ended up being the temporary speed humps. But certainly we could add some money to that line, anticipating potentially more.
So one of the questions that I always get, and I'm going to ask it now, and this is no criticism whatsoever of the fine employees of the highway department and Pete Gosselin in particular, but if I recall correctly, Pete's opposed to asphalt or whatever they're made out of permanent speed tables because the damage they do to plows, the damage plows do to them. And do I have that right?
That's part of the reasoning, yes.
Okay. People always say, well, other towns have them and they seem to get along okay. Why can't we? Do we have an answer for that?
I mean, I'm sure you can plow over them. It probably takes more effort and time to get around them. I do know as far as putting them in, we are, like we talked about, following certain studies to figure out how those work in relation to other potential traffic calming devices that could be out there too.
Well, given that, I mean, if we can put temporary speed tables in, bolt them in the spring and take them out in the fall, and those work, I have no problem with that, but I'd like to make sure that we budget for them, and that I think we should look more, like I said, at the table instead of the bump. And I don't know how many 4 of those or 6 of those or 8 of those would cost, but I think we should budget for at least 4. And possibly there may be other places in town that studies may come back. They may come back and say we should have one here and here. But right now, like, we may need some on Main Street. I don't know, but we should at least budget for them.
Isn't that what the RPC document is supposed to tell us?
Yeah, that's the corridor study for Cochrane Road. It's going to give us a number of recommendations.
And so do we know when that will be complete?
Yeah,
Have we heard it?
it's been pushed out. And,
Well, partly because of staffing issues at the Regional
Right.
Planning Commission.
The current one, I'd have to check, but I mean, I think they should run on fiscal years. So there's one that just started in this fiscal year. So presumably by the end of this fiscal year, so sometime in the spring, but don't quote me on that, but it's
Well,
probably in that time frame.
Where I'm really going is.
It'll be
after
next
the
budget season,
cycle.
yeah.
It would be the subsequent budget cycle.
Right.
And so to your point, do we want to budget something for unknown measures and expenses in next year when we might get the.
I personally am in favor of that. I know that you can't just slap them anywhere. I mean, for example, Pete had to have it pointed out to him that the sign that says 25 ahead was put way too close to where 25 actually happened. I mean, there are the manual uniform traffic control devices, which I 30 years ago had occasion to read cover to cover. There are rules and laws and policies about all of this. So that's why we can't just stick them in.
Yeah.
But when they say put them in, I want to be ready to put them in.
So I would support putting, at least $10,000 into this line item.
Right. I would support going even as high as 15, but that's just because I'm kind of berserk on this topic.
So I just have a comment, though, that's similar to some other comments we had. So either a placeholder here of $15,000 or an expectation of $15,000 given our pattern of excess revenues is not going to kill us anyway. So do you tax it and then bank it, or do you not tax it and say we should be able to absorb a $15,000 expense based on the revenues that we have sitting?
Sure.
So in talking with Keith, we now have a new tab in the capital plan, and that is for planning and zoning projects. But he's just at the point now, he's told me what things we have in the hopper, but I don't have any solid numbers he has them all in 3 different stages. So if you were to put money into a reserve rather than an expense line, then the money would be there if you needed it. And if you so say we're looking for something that might be grant funded and the grant falls through and we say we're not doing it without a grant, the money's there to use on the next project.
So we could say traffic calming measure reserve fund contribution or whatever the magic words are. Is that what you're saying? We don't have a traffic
Something like that. I'll figure it out.
Okay, but Sarah?
You've got unrestricted. I mean, you've got restricted, unassigned funds from last year that specifically go to highway that you can't touch for any other department.
Right.
Don't create another reserve, please.
But I just want to make sure
Funds to fund it. Just stop putting things into the budget that aren't necessary, potentially. That can be a one-time purchase.
One of the reasons why, back to the point you made earlier, Kara, about truth in budgeting, rather than saying we don't need to put it into rather than somebody saying we don't need to put it into the budget because we've got the money in highway restricted, I'd rather have it say we are expected to spend this much. Now, Connie's point is there's a fiduciary advantage to having it in a reserve fund versus a line item. But in terms of truth and budgeting, that's why I'm saying I'd like to see it listed somehow.
I thought it was going to be part of a project that's reviewed and part of built-in cost to the project and possibly grant funding. So I
just want to make sure that we don't overlook this because those things will cost money when the time comes. And I don't like to a certain extent, the unassigned funds are like a cigar box full of petty cash that we just reach into. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to use unassigned funds. The budget is here for a reason. Kara?
My thought is exactly.
On a separate note,
Elise has her hand up.
on the solar speed limit signs.
Oh God, yes.
Can we please stop purchasing those first of all? And second of all, are we getting a refund on the ones that did not work for 90% of the season? You bought a lot of them, you spent a lot of money on them. And
right. And for what it's worth, the batteries are not the issue. The batteries are fully charged. We checked. There's something else wrong. Lisa?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay. Earlier this evening, Transportation Committee, I happened to drop in their meeting. Keith Oborn is collecting a lot of information on speed tables associated with the Bridge Street, Huntington, Cochran, Thompson Road intersection design. I think they're going to come up with a design of a four-way stop. That seems to be the most cost-effective, and don't quote me, but you can quote me. That's what I heard. So wait till we actually see it, but that's going to include speed tables. And I think people are going to want something to be done pretty quickly there, because when you get down to it, that would be the biggest single portion of that whole intersection plan is the speed tables. One on Huntington and one in Cochrane. We don't think Thompson Road, no. And Bridge Street, people don't seem to build up that speed yet. So maybe just two speed tables. If they're, 10,000 a piece, we almost have the money in hand for the budget there. So,
but then we need two at the other end. We need kind of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is part of their mandate to figure out that intersection and how to, mix pedestrians and cars together without anybody getting killed. So they're working hard on it. And speed tables are an integral part of the design that it looks like they've come up with.
Sounds like they're doing a great job there.
They're getting ready to report out to the select board. So soon.
Jeff.
So on a separate topic, it's line 304. It's the reserve for new sidewalks. There's no. Are we not planning on putting in money in the reserve fund for new sidewalks, or are we?
We don't have to.
We've got those two huge pots of money.
Because the original plan was for two different projects, and I guess one of them we're paying with ARPA money now.
Mm-hmm.
So it.
But if we go up, that's reserve. There was another line item up above, like next to
For sidewalks?
stormwater and sidewalk.
That's different.
More maintenance.
Yeah, I get that, but sort of then it's back to new sidewalks. New sidewalks are the one thing that my perception is you get grant funds to help pay for. It's really the ongoing maintenance that's been underfunded over years. Like you build it and then you wait for it to fall apart to replace it. That was a pattern that happened.
Uh-huh.
So to me, that's important. The new sidewalks, there was sort of the earnest money that are matching. It's often 20% to make that happen. But this is kind of to your point. If we have reserve funds for sidewalks, what's the current balance? Do we know of reserve sidewalk?
That line, I see it there. There we go. Sidewalk reserve is 65,000.
So not huge. But part of this is, it's back to what I wrestle with, frankly, as both a representative and a taxpayer. And to what degree do we budget and reserve funds for ideas that we haven't come up with yet? Versus no ideas that we really have, and they're really like they're on a path to fruition.
Right. If we do too much of the former, we're just endlessly putting money aside and telling the taxpayers, trust us, we'll figure it out. And that's not really what we're here for.
I think it's a bad practice.
I agree.
Especially given our, current unobligated fund balance. So when things come up for 10 or 20 or $50,000, we have generally been able to make that work. I think of the remember the riprap project?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that, $70,000 or something? It's real money. There were two. But that was real money. It was like big bang, get it done because we have to get it done. And we made it work. So
it makes sense to me.
Okay. Yeah.
It was 35 and 60.
At the end of the day, though, if we have things should be planned, and that's what the capital plan is for, instead of just saying, we'll just, I don't know.
A player to be named later.
Right.
I like the Braves.
It's worked for them, except for, sorry, I'm not going to go on their starting pitching at this point. Okay, anything else about highway at this point?
Why is guardrail reserve going down?
Because we built all these, at least along Route 2, the state's put in a whole bunch of shiny new ones, and maybe we don't need, although those wouldn't be ours. We don't have to pay for the state ones. We have to pay for the ones like on Dugway. So yeah, why is that going down?
Canyon Road needs them. Southview needs them.
My observation, virtually everyone I see is in worse shape than the old ones on Route 2. They're like falling down the hill.
Maybe we should increase that.
To the point of either like, why are they even there if it's a speed bump on your way off the road?
Right.
So Pete is using this line mainly for a Southview guardrail project. In fiscal year 25, we'll be spending 40,000 of that. And then the next one to come is in fiscal year 28 for Bates Farm Culvert Crossing at 30,000.
And what are what's the guardrail reserve current balance?
Dum-de-dum-de-dum.
Last time we talked.
Oh, it's right there, line 13. It's 29,000.
Yeah.
So before we say let's put a ton more money in there, we have to be cognizant that Pete can only put in so many guardrails unless we hire a contractor to do it.
Doesn't he hire contractors to do
I don't know. Is it one of the things, Connie, that he does, or does he hire that out?
He does it.
That's what I thought.
Doesn't do it?
He might need, I mean, that, isn't there a specialized equipment to, it goes
Well,
down.
if it's a contractor thing, then we should be spending more money there because, as people have said, our guardrails are in terrible shape.
I think let's ask Mike here. Yeah. I want to ask him because if he has specific projects or if it's just general replacement, like what can we do?
This is definitely projects. I know he said that.
Yeah, but is there a need for like Bart's point? A lot of them are deteriorating.
Guardrails all over.
Could we replace 10,000 a year? And I don't know.
Right.
The more you look, the more you see.
Delay.
Okay.
Okay. Planning and zoning?
Okay. So planning and zoning. Now we obviously don't need that at all. So let's just move up. No, I'm sorry.
Dave, can we,
Go ahead.
on the highway was the line striping on Cochrane Road possibly? Because I know like Route 2, they're narrowing the travel portion to allow more room for the recreational purposes. Could we consider that again for Cochrane Road? I know you're doing that whole CCRPC study, but I would really like to see a path for people, a section of the road for recreational purposes identified for people. I think it promotes safer driving by them, if that makes sense. So I'd like you to consider that and also then to look into your line striping costs for that in the highway, please. I'm finding it successful when Route 2 does it. And we did it, I think, went up Browns Court way when we narrowed up that passageway.
It's another area that I agree with Kara.
3 strikes and I'm out of here.
You bought a ladder, you think
The right thing. I think we should look at it, Kara, but I think the problem is, and I'm just going on an assumption, there isn't enough real estate on Cochrane Road to get the minimum lane width and
Probably can't.
a shoulder, but I think we should look at.
That's what that wonderful document Robbie put together, the shiny one with all the colors. That's what he basically came down to. There's simply not room. There's room for like this stretch and then this stretch, but not something consistent.
Even if you're given a foot though, in some of the stretches, it really does help, especially you've got newer drivers and older drivers. So I think it's both helps the driver and the recreational.
No, I agree. It's
I mean, isn't it worth a try?
That's the committee. We have a committee.
And I think part of that will be in the study.
Yeah.
Part of the traffic calming is line striping. So
Beautiful. Thank you.
I
I
think
just
it'll be part of
wanted
that.
a heads up on that for whether it's part of a bigger project or should be increased to line striping. Thank
okay. So now we're ready for planning and zoning. We've just been keeping them, given all the emails I'm getting, they're obviously a busy group over there right now. Okay, so salaries is up a bit. And there's no other really significant, there's legal reserve, we're chipping in a little bit more.
Unhealthy.
Yeah, legal, we started that reserve, was that last year? And maybe it was 2 years ago. And yeah, we've overspent. So trying to chip in a little bit more there. Increase the training line to allow for some more training. Lowered travel because there's less travel for training because there's more online. Created a line for office equipment to try to separate out monthly payment for the copier from general office supplies. But yeah, not a ton of major. I don't think there's any real major.
There's that one random line for internship stipend, which is minimal.
Yeah, I think that was something that Revy had added in. And as Keith looked at it, he said, it would probably be helpful to know we have that option and let's keep it in there for $2,000 because it could be good to look at an intern in the future. Okay. I think we did use it at least 1 year, and then maybe the 1 year we didn't use it.
We used it, but it was before we
Oh, before we actually put the stipend in, okay.
Yeah,
So,
which is why he suggested it.
so, yeah.
So, the regional planning dues, that's for the regional planning
Yeah.
commission, and we also pay a county tax, right?
Yeah, that's an admin though.
Okay, so
I think, right? County tax for the judges.
does that go to the regional planning commission?
No, that goes to the judges.
Who's the judges?
I attend that meeting every year, just for grins. It's like,
Can you roll down just a little bit?
Or your aware of cold duties, right?
it kind of is, but I mean, every year it's just basically paying for two side judges, a head judge and a probate judge, and county courthouse administration costs. And we're paying 2% of the county's charges.
And regional planning dues are a similar sort of thing. It's factored across. I forget if it's population or grand list values, but in any case, Richmond is small compared to the
Right. When you look at the county budget and you realize what a tiny percentage we really are, it puts things into perspective.
Yeah, they do a lot for us.
Okay.
I don't have any substantive comments here. I will do a time check. This says we're ending at 9:45. We are not through.
We have town administration, charitable, and revenue, plus review of policies.
I have a question on the planning and zoning. So we did the reserves. We brought them to the max of 10,000 for fiscal year 25. Keith said, yeah, we're going to need it. And we had actually put a limit on that when we created the reserve. What I want to ask you is line 78. I can just take that off. The only reason I used it was to show that not only did we use all of the reserve, that was the only place I could put it for overspending, but it's nothing that we're budgeting for now.
Okay.
So I can pull that line off. Otherwise, people are going to say, why are we raising legal money twice?
I see.
Connie, does that pay DRB legal fees?
Yeah, anything coming out of planning and zoning.
Okay, I think DRB is going to get busy. They have a meeting tomorrow on Hillview Estates.
Yep.
There's a lot of discontent over there, so it's hard to say what's going to happen, but we need something in there.
Reserve.
Okay.
Cover it.
Yeah.
So, town administration, charitable appropriations and revenue and policies. It is, as Bart said, 9:45. So what's the will of the select board? Do we want to call it quits here and continue at the November meeting, or do we want to try to plunge on and get this done?
So I have a proposal on the charitable contributions. I spent a lot of time looking at the charitable contributions, and there's a lot to discuss there that I don't want to do tonight. I feel that we should have a policy and try to make this more objective than just whoever comes and asks for whatever thing. And I'm wondering if a couple of us could work on what that policy would be and understand what these line items are and how they relate to one another.
We tried that a few years ago. We came up with a form that they had to fill out.
Right.
Form is actually quite good, but and it is helpful, but it doesn't. Not everybody knows exactly how to fill out the form, and
That was the issue.
It doesn't necessarily all line up. And
Well, I think we could definitely spend some time at the next budget meeting. Charitable appropriations, we don't have to solve those tonight. Do we want to go over town administration and revenue and policies, or do we really just want to say we're done for the night? Let's finish this next time.
I suggest that we at least finish town administration and assessors, because then we will have gotten through the internal expenditures.
Okay.
And then arguably we can deal with charitable revenue and financial policies at our next meeting.
Ariana, the answer is yes.
Okay. Thanks for answering that. I'm just wondering if there were any specific questions about the market application, and if I might be able to answer them tonight. I'm not positive I'll be able to be at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I have to say, I looked at the charitable appropriations fairly carefully over the last couple of days, and I do not have any questions for the farmers market.
Nor do I.
It's a reasonable request and we get a lot of benefit out of it.
I agree.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ariana. It sounds like no one here is grumbling about it.
Okay, amazing. Thank you all for confirming that and for taking the time to read the application. I just read through our application today. The board president of the market wrote it, and there was a lot of really good information in there that I probably would have just turned to answer your questions. So, and if there are ever any questions, feel free to just shoot us an email or shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to answer them. I know, Jeff, you have my email, so thanks all for reading that app.
Kara do you have a question about that?
Yes, and on the charitable side of things, and I apologize for not getting to all the documents online. Is there information about each of the charities and what their full budgets are and that kind of thing? Because I know we used to make the Richmond Rescue now provide us with a budget and all of those kinds of things to ask for a contribution from us. Do all the charitable organizations give their budget and show us what the purpose of the funds are?
So to answer your question, some yes, some no, and some are clearer than others. It takes a while to sort it all out. And there are other sources of information to be able to get that, but it takes a while.
Right. There's lots of places you can get Form 990s, but it would sure be helpful if they would submit them themselves.
Yeah, maybe the 990 would be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that, Jay. And the only reason I'm asking that out loud is because I do want to participate, not tonight, not right now, in the charitable side of things. But I am concerned if we have things like we're paying farmers market $2,500 and we're giving COTS $1,000 when the homelessness issue is a bigger issue than vendors who should be, just like you're saying, when on 4th of July, vendors should be paying to participate rather than us pay them to participate. So my concern is that we're increasing something to $2,500 for a group of people in town who can afford to go to the farmer's market while other people are potentially going homeless. So I like that idea of you guys talking about this openly and stuff like that. And
right.
I don't know how much information is on each charity that's asking.
Right. I think that we're not interested in just rubber stamping. There are a couple expenses. One that Jeff and I messaged about that we're like, really? Why is that even coming to us? So.
Okay, that's good to know, because I did probably see the same one as you or two as you and go, what? But I just want to have us have that open discussion of supplementing farmers market versus potentially helping pay for some services that our community might need.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So my
Yeah,
only
and
point.
can I just really quickly respond to that? The application does ask the total program budget, and we provided that. And I think it's really important to highlight that the farmers market accepts SNAP, EBT, and EBT cash funds, and a massive amount of our administration goes to running that program, running coupon incentive programs, and the market manager is paid a stipend that comes out to roughly $15 an hour, which is not really a livable wage. I'm now on the board of the farmers market. When I was the manager, I was paid what came out to $7 an hour. I was on SNAP and EBT, and I could barely pay my rent. And I was also working 2 other jobs. So supplementing what the vendors pay to make the manager stipend a livable wage, pay for the administration of processing SNAP, EBT, and administering crop cash and coupon programs, farm to family, which partners with WIC. It's a really important thing that the town supplement that funding. Otherwise, the farmers market will not be able to pay a manager a wage that will keep them around, and the farmers market will not be a resource for all people in Richmond, including low-income folks.
Ariana, thank you. Thank you. I did not know that. I appreciate you educating me. I truly do, Jay. I'm appreciating this time that she could take that time. I would love more of that information to go to the public, because I'm here all the time. And if I don't know something, there's a lot of people out there.
So
Thank you,
Yep, and that's all in our application as
Thank you.
yes, and there's actually a lot of information in our packet about most of the requests that we've got. I would welcome somebody,
Lisa, David, Art, helping me figure out what, there are a bunch of them, there are a bunch of, and what I'd like to do with the charitable contributions is try to come up with some objective criteria of, what all that kind of stuff.
And I think that is a good point, Jeff, because they're organizations we smile on. We think they're great organizations, but should an organization be coming to us and asking us to pay for their trip to Maui? No, that's a bad example because no one needs a trip to Maui. It burned down. But do they need us to pay for their office supplies? Okay. Or is there another way they could be getting that? Should that be coming from the town? Is there a benefit to the town of that? Art.
I was only going to make the point that these come in independently, and the financial request from each organization does not necessarily represent anybody's perception of the value of that organization. Yeah. That's just what they asked us for. Right. And so if COTS asks us for $1,000, well, that's what they asked us for. If they ask for more, might we give them more? Maybe. But I don't think we're in a position of giving more than people ask for. At least that's our general practice. But in terms of next steps, I think it makes sense to come up with a basic rubric about what do we approve or not approve. Are there like standards where there's like a request just doesn't meet this standard?
Right.
And that is certainly possible. And I think we have subjective ideas of why that would be so, but like writing it down and saying, these are the criteria and you failed on this one is probably a more transparent and accountable kind of process.
Okay, so I think these are all good points and we'll return to a more detailed discussion. But to kind of close out the meeting, I think it would be a good idea to go ahead and try to knock off the town administration and assessors. So if we could scroll to that on the spreadsheet. So some notes here, increased employee, let's see, is that line 17 down there? We're spending a little bit more on employee recognition because we think there's a value to it. An example would be tomorrow between 4 and 6 p.m. we're going to have an employee recognition event for the employees who perform virtually superhuman feats of effort during the flood. And I think that's money that $2,000 I don't think is too much to spend. And that's not even this fiscal year. That's going forward. But sometimes saying attaboy and giving recognition can have much more impact than just simply saying, here's a check. And so I think that is good money to spend. Election expenses. We have 3 elections in FY25. That's why that goes up. Town reports are lower because we have a less expensive vendor. Our new phone system costs a little bit more. Contract services election, but that's duplicative of the other one. Auditing, we will need a single audit because of the amount of federal funds received for FEMA projects. So that's why that's there. Let's see, what line is that?
Yeah, sorry.
First person to see the word auditing on that screen gets
Line 36.
Line 36. There we go. Okay, because we have to have a single audit because we've gotten so much. All right, is everybody familiar with what you all know what a single? Okay, good. Increased grounds maintenance. I don't really quite get the explanation.
Yeah, so that was really set, I think, at the estimate that we had going into 2 seasons ago. This year, I think we got it for less than, it was about $30,000 is the contract this year. But as we've gone through grounds maintenance this year, there's been a number of like sort of more attention to detail was needed. And I think the current contractor has been great to continue to kind of respond to requests, even though the RFP was a little general. So we're going to try to tighten that RFP up, be more specific about some areas, which I think might increase the cost of grounds maintenance, but it's sort of a learning process as this is our second year contracting it out and we learn what we really need and value. So that's why I anticipate that going up.
Okay, and then lastly, reappraisal line. We've gotten a grant each year and we've used some of that to pay for current year assessor activities. For this draft of the budget, they've budgeted the full amount of the grant to go to the reappraisal reserve fund. to build that fund back up to prepare for the next reappraisal. And if you've been following reappraisal in the media, some people at the state level want to require a reappraisal every 6 years for all towns. So yeah, I saw that today. So, but then again, the state's also been talking about just taking over appraising statewide. So there's a lot we don't know that could change between now and when this budget goes into effect. Sorry, go ahead.
Nothing.
No, it's one of those things that everybody has a bright idea about, and who knows what's going to happen. Yeah.
Line item 38, community well-being. Is that Stephanie Hartsfield?
Correct.
Huh?
Yes.
So, would that maybe should be in the charitable contribution line rather than the
It's because it's a program expense and that we actually have some direction over.
Because community well-being isn't an actual organization. It's more, it really does relate back to the work Stephanie's been doing, but it's a lot of research using various organizations and resources to get that research accomplished for mostly substance abuse prevention awareness within the community.
I don't dispute that it's valuable service. I think she's doing great things. I just wondered whether this is where it belongs. I guess we administered a grant for her. And so is that why it's here?
So can I observe, this is an example of, I think when we get to charitable contributions, like the charitable requester has to exist as an organization, like they're a 501c3. If I'm giving money to a charity or a nonprofit organization, in theory, it should exist and have a 501c3 status. That's just an example of the criteria. And I think in that regard that this one's failed because she's not a 501c3 organization.
I think she might be, exactly.
But it's also not specific to her company. Something could come along that we use it for another company.
That's true.
Yeah.
And not everything that she does goes to her company either. Sometimes there's other
Actually, I'll throw this out. We are working on stocking opioid. We're stocking Narcan, naloxone here. We've had the training, trying, but once that's stocked, one thing we may need to spend money on is publicizing that fact across town so that when you're having your next overdose and Richmond Rescue is responding to calls out of town that you know where to come. I mean, that might be an example of where we would spend money that would not be Stephanie Hartsfield.
And that type of thing, we can use the funding that we got from the opioid settlement.
That is also true. That's right.
Oh, we did get that? Because I saw that under revenue. It's not in revenue.
Yeah, we need to probably provide an update as far as how much money we have and what we need, what we expect and what we can use it for. But we do have some of that.
Right. If there's anything we can do with that money makes even just a small dent, we should be doing it.
I did reach out to Richmond Rescue to see if they had any ideas, but I heard that.
Yeah, there's $1 million for getting trained, and then it's like, where's my Narcan? And there's like 3 different agents.
That part, Jay, where's my what?
Narcan. My naloxone. We're training people how to administer naloxone, and then they're like, okay, where's my naloxone? We can buy it expensively from a pharmacy, but we're supposed to be able to get it cheaper through the government, and then it's like everybody's pointing at everybody else. But Connie's still trying.
I love that the pharmaceutical industry is making money on selling the product that they created the problems.
Their next big product, right?
You're making money off of it too, I think.
At least we're not yet at the point of funding a needle exchange program. That problem hasn't worked its way here yet that I've seen, but give it time. Okay. Did the work, Aaron asks in MMC TV, did the work in community wellness contribute to the rebuilding of the Richmond website?
No.
No.
It was a separate line item for website.
Okay. Okay, so any further thoughts about the town administration and assessors group of categories? David?
Not at this point. I think as we go through it again and look at the bottom lines.
Yeah, what is the bottom line?
4.7%.
Thank you.
And the biggest increase there is salaries and insurance.
Mostly, yeah.
I will.
Okay. Okay, so that leaves on our agenda revenue and review of financial policies, and it's the will of the select board that we cover those at the next budget meeting.
And charitable.
And charitable, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to come up with some criteria. Maybe I'll float it past.
Okay,
You know,
Sure,
I
I
can't
do
do
one.
3, you know, so I can do 2.
Okay, so Jim, Connie,
Yeah.
Josh, is there anything else? Are we being remiss by not covering something tonight?
We just, the policies and procedures, it's like we really need to address this fund balance one. It's what we keep getting dinged for.
We want to spend a
Audit
couple
and
minutes on that
manager stuff.
before we go?
I actually think that's
We can change it at any point, but they just want us,
it's a pretty.
they want to be able to see we have
Okay, so
something.
Meaty conversation.
maybe we can have that, instead of another executive session at the next meeting. Or the review financial policies, is there any reason that cannot be on next week's agenda?
I think it could be next week's agenda. I think she might zoom in for that one, but I asked Connie to be in
Yeah.
person tonight because.
But yeah, I don't see we need to put that off for a month.
The next one might be.
Can you release the actual data so we can graph it? Historical data so we can graph it?
Yeah, I can add the percentage.
Thanks, Ariana. We appreciate that.
If you can you just put the actual, this year, the budget amount, this is how much is in each, and I don't have a problem with creating the points on the graph.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of that. I can show.
Well, there's one of the attachments in tonight's packet, I copied in the revenue page from out of town for the past 5 years.
No, but you're looking at the one that I did for the town report where, and I think I did the opposite of what Barb was suggesting, because I was looking at it as how much money is left over at the previous year going into the next year as a percentage of that budget, so we know sort of what we have on hand. But I can look at the other way.
I
can
can
see-
see data, I can make graphs.
I can do it both ways too. It's fairly, I got the historical data. It's pretty simple.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
That helps, right?
It doesn't look good.
Yeah,
for
it
both Orioles.
Graphically shows, yeah.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Sorry, I just checked the scores and Texas is clobbering Baltimore, so much for Baltimore.
Well, too bad for both. I got to find a new team to vote for or root for this year.
Okay, so seeing no other business, the remaining thing is agenda items for next meeting. And I think since this is a budget meeting, we normally be talking about agenda items for the next budget meeting, which I think we've just done. Come back to charitable appropriations, revenue, but financial policies we anticipate discussing at the next regular select board meeting. So anything else in that light that we should be discussing before we look for motion to adjourn?
The one thing that Jeff and I were sidebarring about was the charitable appropriations, like, what do we call them, guidelines?
Right.
Criteria, maybe?
So
Criteria.
yes, will the two of you be chatting about that? Can we kind of make it an ad hoc committee?
Actually, at the next budget meeting would probably be the right time. It'll take a little while.
Yeah.
But did you want to liaise about that before now? Okay.
Yeah, so
We'll come back with some kind of,
Okay.
Could you do an agenda item for your next select board meeting with an update on the speed signs? I mean,
I don't see why not.
well,
we'll be returning them at some point.
So Duncan continues to look into them, but he hasn't looked into them a ton. So I mean, it's one
We're
of these
gonna have
things
to-
that doesn't really have a whole.
I think we should have a very hateful phone call with their management and say none of them work.
if this were a dishwasher, you'd be right,
You wanna be on your-
taking it back.
so do we feel that that's part of the highway responsibility or part of the police department
That's
responsibility?
Right. A good question. I asked Duncan to do it. He's like, he went out there, took a look and was like, I don't feel comfortable going up there without some sort of car blocking me or lights or, you know. So
Because they're actually asking him, the manufacturers asked him to send the one by his house in.
Well, so my only concern with that is that, you know, Pete's been a little busy of late, and you know, I'm not sure this would be the highest priority for him. And similarly, our new police chief has some significant issues that he needs to look into. So, you know, this is it's an important issue. It may not be. I would look to either Pete or Anthony or you, Josh, as to where this fits on the priority level.
But I do think if we're talking about speed bumps and we've got completely non-functioning radar signs,
it's pretty,
Yeah.
concerning that it's an investment that it seems not to accomplish anything.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking for motion to adjourn.
This is David, so moved.
Bart, I will second that.
Motion from David Sander to adjourn, seconded by Bart Hill. Is there any discussion? Lisa, I'm sorry for consistently overlooking your hands tonight. Please state your name and your vote.
This is Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Is that yours, Lisa?
Lisa, I.
Jay, aye. We are adjourned. Connie?
Is